When people think of disasters, they imagine something loud. Unexpected earthquakes that snap roads in seconds, gas explosions that bring down buildings, volcanic eruptions that cover entire cities in ash. But sometimes, the real danger is creeping in without a sound. Parts of Arizona are sinking, slowly losing elevation year after year. Why is this happening? And just how much damage can something like this actually cause? Arizona isn't sitting on solid rock. It's sitting on a geological layer cake of sand, clay, and gravel. Think of the ground beneath your feet like a giant wet kitchen sponge. When a sponge is full of water, it's fluffy and holds its shape. That water isn't just in the dirt, it's what's holding everything up. Here's where things go wrong. People pump out that water to use it, but if they take it out faster than nature can put it back in, the gaps start to close. The grains get squished together by the weight of everything above, and when that happens, the ground starts losing the fight. Without the water to hold them apart, the dirt layers collapse under the weight of the world, almost literally. But once that happens, it's not like a sponge anymore. It's like a crushed soda can. You can't just blow air into a flat soda can and fix it. The structure is ruined. Once those underground layers are crushed, they stay crushed forever. Even if it rains for 40 days and 40 nights, the ground can't hold the water anymore. This is called land subsidence. It doesn't matter if water is pumped out or if rainwater rushes away too fast. If underwater pressure drops for long enough, the land starts to sink. And it's not just a one-time thing. Every year that more water is pumped out, the land sinks a little more. Over time, these changes can reshape entire towns and regions. So how do scientists notice something this subtle? From the ground, subsidence is hard to spot. The surface doesn't suddenly drop in one obvious place. Buildings don't suddenly tip over. You won't wake up one day to see your neighbor's house being a few inches lower than yours. Most of the time, everything looks normal. So to really see what's happening, scientists have to look from above, way up from space. Scientists use INSAR satellites, super precise scanners in orbit that can spot ground changes thinner than a US nickel from hundreds of miles away. Using this method, scientists tracked parts of Arizona over several years. What they found was alarming. Large areas weren't just sinking a little. Some places were dropping by inches every year. In certain regions, the total drop added up to several feet in just a short span of time. And this wasn't limited to one small spot. Entire basins were moving downward together, like a slow-motion elevator heading down. What made this even more concerning is that the sinking didn't stop during the wetter years. Even when rainfall increased and water levels rose a bit, the land kept sinking. In some places, this process actually sped up. That told scientists something important. The ground wasn't just reacting to short-term weather, it was responding to years of pressure building underground. Even from space, the pattern was impossible to miss. Wide regions glowing on satellite maps, showing steady downward motion year after year. What looked stable from the street turned out to be quietly shifting across miles of land. And once scientists could see it clearly, a bigger question emerged. What now? The surface can only take so much before it snaps. The land doesn't sink evenly. One spot drops fast, another barely moves. That pulls the surface in opposite directions. The surface tries to stretch, but eventually it snaps. And we aren't talking about sidewalk cracks. The earth literally rips open, creating jagged wounds called fissures, wide enough to split roads apart and damage paved highways. Infrastructure absolutely hates this. Roads bend, twist, and buckle. Pipes and cables buried underground are yanked out of alignment or torn apart. Canals that depend on a gentle, steady slope suddenly stop flowing the way they're supposed to. Even buildings that look fine at first start to give themselves away. Floors can tilt, doors might refuse to close, and long fractures can appear across walls. Wells are affected too. As the ground compacts, it crushes the underground rock layers like a vise. This closes off the flow, turning a working well into a dry hole. Basically, by pumping too much, we're breaking the pump. But it might get worse. These problems spread across entire basins, meaning damage can show up far from where the sinking first began. By the time surface damage becomes obvious, the underground changes that caused it may already be locked in, which means the real challenge isn't fixing the cracks you can see. It's dealing with the ground that's still slowly changing beneath them. So, can this be stopped? Or maybe reversed? Here's the harsh reality. There is no undo button for this. Once that underground rock is crushed, it stays crushed. The best we can do is step on the brakes and stop it from getting worse. One approach is artificial recharge. Arizona has built massive systems to move water across the state. One of the biggest is the Central Arizona Project, a canal that stretches more than 330 miles, carrying water from the Colorado River deep into the desert. They dump massive amounts of water into giant empty fields called recharge basins, letting it seep back underground to repressurize the earth. It's not fixing the crushed sponge. That damage is done. It's more like loosening your grip so you don't crush it even more. You don't get the space back, but you can keep things from getting worse. The other approach is tougher. Arizona drew some hard lines on the map. They're called active management areas, and inside them, groundwater use is tightly limited. You can't just drill a well anywhere and pump non-stop anymore. The goal is to stop one area from sinking so fast that it pulls everything around it down too. In places like Phoenix and Tucson, where these rules kicked in early, the sinking actually slowed down. In other parts of the state, where pumping stayed heavy and rules were looser, the ground kept dropping. Not because the idea doesn't work, but because slowing subsidence only works if pressure is eased early. Arizona is just the latest member of the Sinking Cities Club. In fact, there are far worse cases around the planet. Look at California. The Central Valley there is basically the world champion of deflation. Farmers have been pumping water out of the ground so aggressively for so long that in some spots, the land has dropped by 30 feet. It's gotten so bad that gravity-fed canals are confused because water doesn't like flowing uphill. Then you have Mexico City. The problem there goes back hundreds of years. The city was built right on top of an ancient drained lake bed. As water was pumped out to support a growing population, the ground began to sink. In some neighborhoods, buildings now sit many feet lower than they did a century ago. Streets have been repaved again and again, not because they wore out, but because the city itself kept dropping. It's happening all over the map, from coastal towns to big farming hubs. The ground is getting tired of holding us up. Arizona is just proving how sneaky this can be. It quietly reshapes the world while we're busy looking at our phones, which makes you wonder. If huge chunks of the planet can sink this quietly, how many places are changing right now without anyone noticing? It really makes you rethink the phrase solid ground. Maybe the ground floor will become a basement in 30 years. Or maybe it's just Earth sending us a bill for all the water we carelessly throw away. Okay, just like Arizona, those jokes are a bit dry. So I'll stop now before I sink any lower. Thanks for watching, and try not to let the situation get you down.
So, how long would it take to drain all the water out of the ocean? Any guesses? Well, the water would be rushing out at almost a mile per second. Imagine if we had a drain that was only 2 inches wide. With a drain that size, we'd be able to drain about 105 cubic feet of water every second. But here's where things get mind-blowing. The oceans hold 332,500,000 cubic miles of water. So, if we were to drain it at a rate of 105 cubic feet per second, it would take us, well, get ready to look at the screen. I can't even pronounce this. That many seconds to completely drain the ocean. That's the equivalent of 15 billion years. Never mind where you're going to put all that water you drain. Didn't think about that part, did you? Okay, let's just say you're driving home and suddenly your GPS freezes. Your phone says you've got full bars, but it takes forever to make a call. Or maybe the call drops for no reason and you have to redial. You brush it off. Probably just your carrier being weird. But then, later, during a house party, your light flickers for a second. No need to panic, you're not haunted by a ghost. At least I hope not. No, it's much more likely that the sun is acting up. because a giant hole about 500,000 miles wide opened in its atmosphere, and now it's sending strange stuff straight at us on Earth. Okay, so what does that even mean, a hole in the sun? Well, when we look at the sun with highly protective sunglasses, of course, all we can see is a bright, calm star. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Up close, it's total chaos. Its surface boils with magnetic storms. The loops of plasma twist and snap, and every now and then, the outer layer, called the corona, becomes unpredictable. That's what happened recently when a massive region of the sun's atmosphere suddenly changed shape. So scientists call it a coronal hole, but don't picture a crack or a crater. It's more like an open vent in the sun's outer layer. Our star has these invisible forces running through it, like tension lines beneath the surface. Most of the time, they loop back on themselves, but sometimes, in certain spots, they stretch outward into space like open lanes. And that's when stuff starts flying. Particles shoot out at crazy speeds in what we call the solar wind. This wind hurls through space at about 1 million miles per hour, which is fast enough to reach Earth in a few days. The area of the sun where the wind comes from looks darker and cooler than the rest of it. That's why we call it a coronal hole. And the current one is huge, so big that you could fit about 62 Earths side by side. It stretches across a massive chunk of the sun's southern hemisphere and is pointed straight at our planet. So, what exactly is the sun sending our way, and what happens when it gets here? Well, solar wind isn't just fast. It's also packed with tiny charged particles the sun hurls out when it's feeling active. And when that stream runs into Earth's magnetic field, it's like tossing a rock into a still pond. It presses against our planet's magnetic shield, distorting it like a balloon being poked from the outside. That's what creates these breathtaking auroras. However, sometimes, the sun takes it even further. Instead of a steady stream, it blasts out a massive cloud of solar material all at once. That's called a coronal mass ejection, or CME. This can mess with GPS and jam signals, as partly because of something called the ionosphere, a charged layer way up in Earth's atmosphere that helps radio signals travel. When that layer gets disturbed, signals start bouncing weirdly or dropping out completely. In late May 2025, Earth was hit by a geomagnetic storm. It was classified as a G3, which means strong. It came from a stream of high-speed solar wind released by a coronal hole and caused visible auroras as far south as Iowa and Oregon. Warnings issued pointed to GPS and shortwave radio disruptions during the storm, but no serious issues were reported. Just a few days later, the situation got worse. On June 1st and 2nd, another storm happened. This time, it was a G4 class. That one is considered a severe level event, just one step below the highest category. The skies lit up. People across the northern U.S., and even as far south as California and New Mexico, saw glowing curtains of green and pink across the night sky. It's the kind of thing you normally have to travel to the Arctic or Antarctic Circle to see. Okay, fine, I'm convinced. Ghosts don't do this stuff. But it wasn't just a light show, although even astronauts aboard the International Space Station were able to capture breathtaking pictures. Airlines received radiation warnings and may have altered some flight paths as a precaution. Satellite operators were monitoring for signal drift, and high-frequency radio used by ships, planes, and amateur operators could have experienced brief disruptions. But then came another one. A few weeks later, in mid-June, Earth was hit by a G2-class geomagnetic storm. It wasn't as intense as the earlier G4 event, which meant less risk for disruptions and another chance to catch glowing skies on camera. Then, just to keep things interesting, the sun followed it up with a pair of powerful solar flares on June 17th and 19th. Solar flares are distinct kinds of outbursts, but with similar consequences. The sun's surface is constantly moving, dragging magnetic fields around like tangled cords. Eventually, those lines get twisted so tightly that they snap, and that snap is what causes a solar flare. If a CME is the sun launching materials, A solar flare is more like the sun flipping a light switch, except the light is radiation, which floods space at the speed of, well, light. Flares hit fast, sometimes within minutes, and they don't need to carry particles to cause problems. So, while CMEs are like massive clouds of solar blasts that take a day or two to arrive, solar flares are the flash that hits you before you even see it coming. And in mid-June, Earth got hit with 2 of them, one after another. The second one was the stronger one and briefly knocked out radio communications across parts of the US. Why is all this happening? It's not random. The sun follows a pattern. It goes through phases, kind of like moods. Yeah, solar moods. Every 11 years or so, it gets a little dramatic. More flares, more sunspots, more weirdness. Scientists call this peak period the solar maximum, and we are currently in the middle of one. Right now, we're in solar cycle 25, which is expected to peak sometime between now and early 2026. During this time, the sun's getting active. It seems like things are just starting to heat up, and we can expect even wilder storms in the coming months. But if that's the case, should we be worried? Well, not really. At least not in a run-for-the-bunkers kind of way. Solar storms don't hurt people directly. You're not going to get sunburned through your roof or microwaved in your sleep. Unless they announce a beautiful aurora, you won't even know it happened. The bigger concern is for the systems quietly running in the background – satellites, navigation networks, and electricity. When the magnetic field gets disturbed, it can cause electric currents to form on the ground. And those currents don't just stay underground, they can sneak into power lines. If those currents get strong enough, they can overload transformers, damage electrical systems, and even knock out entire power grids. That's what happened in Quebec in 1989, when a solar storm blacked out the whole province in 90 seconds. So that's why agencies like NASA and NOAA track solar activity constantly. They know when something's headed our way, how strong it might be, and what kind of warnings to send out. Now, we usually don't think about the sun unless it's too hot or messing with our beach plans, huh? Or when it's freezing and we're stuck indoors, dreaming of summer. But occasionally, it reminds us that it's still a wild thing. A fascinating ball of chaos. It flares, it erupts, it throws giant waves of charged particles across space just to see what happens. And even from 93 million miles away, we feel it. A dropped signal, a beautiful glowing sky, a power flicker. Little hints that we're not as disconnected from space as we'd like to believe. So, the next time your GPS acts weird or your screen glitches for no reason, don't blame your phone or Casper. It just might be the sun feeling moody again. It was April 2025 when geologists went back to Yellowstone's Norris Geyser Basin for the first time this year. And while doing their usual check, they realized that something was different this time. Where there used to be just a boring patch of ground, now there was a giant hole, about 13 feet wide, filled with weird, milky, light blue water. Everyone was terrified. Was it the sign that the Yellowstone supervolcano was ready to erupt? If so, it would be a worldwide disaster, the kind that destroys cities. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, if such an eruption occurred, the after effects would be felt all over the world. To start, the areas immediately surrounding Yellowstone would experience pyroclastic flows. That's the lava that erupts out of a volcano, including a high-density mix of volcanic gas, ash, pumice, and hot lava blocks. Those flows would destroy everything they touch, and an eruption of Yellowstone would send them into Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. Areas further away from Yellowstone would escape the flows, but they would experience falling ash. It would come down heavily in the states closest to the epicenter. The ash would be especially dangerous for anyone breathing it in. The weight of the ash would also pose a serious threat. It would smother crops and collapse buildings as it piles up. Tragic consequences would be countless, but we'll talk about them later. because soon after the discovery, the weird pit surprised even experts. Geologists found rocks scattered everywhere. Some were about a foot across, and all of them were dusted with gray mud. This mud matched the walls of the new spring. It was like the place had simply exploded, but nobody had actually seen it happen. The team checked old satellite images to figure out when it appeared. In December 2024, the ground was totally normal. By January 6, 2025, a little dip had formed. And by February 13th, that water-filled hole was finally there. But the weird thing was that the sensors that usually pick up major hydrothermal explosions didn't detect anything. There was no giant blast or warning signs. Later, it turned out that this puzzling opening in the ground hadn't just popped up in one huge explosion. Instead, it formed from a bunch of smaller bursts over time. Little explosions first threw out rocks, then mud, and eventually created the pit. With time, it filled with silica-rich water. That was a huge relief for everyone. Yellowstone sits on a supervolcano, and its big explosions are a nightmare scenario. Luckily, this time, it was just a slow-building, small-scale explosion. It was dramatic, sure, but totally manageable. You see, Yellowstone National Park is full of geysers, hot springs, and all kinds of natural landscapes. But under the surface, things get incredibly intense, all because of the supervolcano. Now, supervolcanoes are often extremely large. They often have no cone at all, since they're typically the remains of gigantic magma chambers. Once, those chambers flared up, leaving behind a caldera. They're usually located over hotspots. It's no surprise that supervolcanoes can produce super eruptions, and when they do it, they blow more than 240 cubic miles of ash, molten rock, and hot gases up into the air. In other words, 4 super eruptions could fill the Grand Canyon to the brim. Supervolcanoes form when huge volumes of scorching hot magma escape from deep underground. This magma rises close to the surface but can't break through Earth's crust. So, a pressurized pool of bubbling magma gathers at a depth of only several miles. The pressure keeps growing because more and more magma is trying to get to the surface. And then, bang, a super eruption occurs. Now, back in 2015, researchers at the University of Utah mapped out the main magma chamber of the Yellowstone supervolcano and were shocked by its size. And then, they found another one below it. Together, these underground magma pools could hold enough molten rock to fill the Grand Canyon 11 times. All that magma pushes up on the ground above, which is why Yellowstone rises about an inch or two every year. That slow lift might not sound like much, but combine it with the fact that Yellowstone is still an active volcano and has a volcanic explosivity index of 8, and it's enough to make you wonder what could happen if things went south. And yes, Yellowstone has indeed been a bit jumpy in recent years. In March 2023, there were 354 earthquakes in the area. Most were tiny, but the biggest hit a magnitude 3.7, part of a swarm of 106 quakes. Now, before you freak out, experts from the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory say there's no need to panic. No eruption is coming anytime soon. Volcanoes don't stick to a schedule. Just because Yellowstone hasn't erupted in a long time doesn't mean it's about to blow. The park is stable for now, but scientists are keeping a close eye on everything underground, the quakes, the rising ground, and even temperature changes, just to be safe. The superhot plume of magma, a hotspot under Yellowstone, has been churning for 17 million years. The Earth's crust slowly moved over it, making the hotspot leave a trail of volcanoes stretching more than 450 miles along the Snake River Plain. Most of those ancient ones are now buried under layers of lava and sediment. In just the past 2.1 million years, Yellowstone has unleashed 3 cataclysmic eruptions, So massive, they managed to reshape the land. Each explosion sent pyroclastic flows, rivers of searing hot rock, ash, and pumice racing outward for miles. The debris piled up in layers hundreds of feet thick, some forming solid lava-like rock. When those eruptions emptied the underground magma chambers, the roof collapsed, forming the massive calderas we see today. Even after those mega eruptions, Yellowstone didn't stop. Between 180,000 and 70,000 years ago, enormous rhyolite lava flows, sometimes over 144 cubic miles, poured out. Some flows followed north-south vent lines. The West Yellowstone flow erupted around 110,000 years ago. The Nez Perez Creek flow followed 160,000 years ago. If you stand at Madison Junction on the caldera's northwest rim, you can see it, a cliff that formed when the Lava Creek Tuff eruption collapsed the land 640,000 years ago. And inside the caldera, you'll see the hardened lava flows snaking across the floor. Figuring out when a supervolcano might blow is like being able to read nature's warning signals. Thousands of years before a massive eruption, the heat underground starts building, and the magma chambers become like ticking pressure cookers. Little signs start showing up. Gas bubbles escape as the pressure shifts, and earthquakes shake the ground. The land above slowly rises. Cracks appear. Hot springs and geysers start acting up, heating even more than usual. Now, what would happen if Yellowstone erupted? Remember those pyroclastic flows we talked about before? They can contain two parts: the lower flow of the hot lava that moves at ground level, and a cloud of ash that follows above the lava level. So the two of them would devastate huge areas. The ash would even reach Europe within 3 to 4 days of the eruption, but it wouldn't be so bad there. After that, it would only take around 2 to 3 weeks before cooler temperatures set in around the globe, all thanks to the sulfur gas that would get to the upper atmosphere after the eruption. Scientists predict that global temperatures would drop by up to 10 to 12 degrees. These consequences could last for 6 to 10 years, putting an end to monsoons, which could cause widespread famine in Asia. Scared? Well, don't be. The good news is that scientists don't believe that the sleeping giant under Yellowstone National Park will wake up in our lifetime. Experts say the next Yellowstone eruption won't likely happen for hundreds of thousands of years. And even then, it may not be that bad, because scientists have discovered that the magma lurking within Yellowstone is actually split up amongst 4 different chambers. Not only that, but some of the reservoirs of magma are likely to cool down and solidify, lessening the chances of an eruption. So, while an eruption does sound like it would change the landscape of the world, it's very unlikely to happen anytime soon.
Roofs fly off like paper, huge trees are yanked from the ground, power lines snap and leave neighborhoods in the dark. Streets flood like rivers, homes are left in ruins. That's a hurricane passing through. After the wind calms down, the real mess begins. People stranded, no clean water, destroyed roads. Storms have been picking up for like 5,700 years. And the scariest part is that in the last 20 years, there's been a huge spike. But let's start from the very beginning. This is Belize, a small country on the northeastern coast of Central America. And this is the Great Blue Hole, a huge, deep underwater sinkhole about 410 feet deep and approximately 50 miles off the coast of Belize. It formed around 10,000 years ago when the sea levels rose after the last ice age. A team of scientists arrived in Central America to study mud from way down in the Great Blue. They pulled out a long sample of sediment, which is basically layers of stuff that's settled over time. You might ask, so what? How are tropical storms connected with this sediment? Let's see. Tropical cyclones are big, spinning storms that form over warm ocean water. They pull up heat from the sea and blast it into the sky. And yeah, they can be devastatingly destructive, with super strong winds, heavy rain, and floods from big waves. And mud cores like the one the researchers pulled up are actually records of tropical storms. The sample they pulled up was 98 feet long, which made it the longest ever found in that area. Here's how it works. Every year, 2 thin layers of sediment settle in the hole where the weather is calm. But when a big storm hits, it leaves behind a different, messier layer. So by looking at these layers, scientists could tell how many storms hit that spot over the last 5,700 years. It's like counting tree rings, you know? Anyway, what they found was rather unexpected. It turns out that tropical cyclones had been getting more and more common. The lead researcher said that over the past 6,000 years, there were usually between 4 and 16 tropical storms or hurricanes every 100 years. But just in the last 20 years alone, they found signs of 9 storms in that same little area. That's way more than usual, and it shows how much things are changing. Scientists think there are 2 main reasons why tropical storms have been happening more often. One reason has to do with something called the Intertropical Convergence Zone, or ITCZ. This is an area near the equator where winds from the north and south come together. That spot has low air pressure, lots of moisture, and tons of thunderstorms. Just above it is the part of the Atlantic Ocean where most hurricanes are born. It even has an official name, the Hurricane Main Development Region. Normally, the ITCZ moves north in the summer and south in the winter because of changes in ocean temperatures. But over the past few thousand years, it's slowly been shifting farther and farther south. That's why the area where storms usually start has also moved south. It means storms are now forming and heading toward lower parts of the Atlantic than they used to. The second reason for the recent spike in storms is rising ocean temperatures. Earth has gotten warmer, and the ocean has warmed up too. The warm oceans help make more powerful storms. Such an increase likely means that this part of the world might see a lot more big storms in the future. If things keep going the way they are, scientists think the Caribbean could get hit by as many as 45 tropical storms and hurricanes by the end of this century. That's way more than anything the world has experienced in the last 5,700 years. There are just too many changes in the world that influence the situation. They create the perfect conditions for more storms to form and get really intense really fast. But if you think storms are getting more intense only over the ocean, let me tell you about America. A bunch of really dangerous storms, including tornadoes, dust storms, and wildfires, tore through several states in the Midwest and south of the USA in March 2025. At least 42 people lost their lives, and the scale of the devastation is enormous. What's scary is that most of this destruction didn't happen in the usual Tornado Alley area. Tornado Alley is a nickname for a part of the US where tornadoes happen a lot. It stretches through places like northern Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, parts of Louisiana, Iowa, Nebraska, and even eastern Colorado. But this time, storms hit places like Mississippi, Arkansas, and Alabama. Experts had warned this might happen. At the beginning of 2025, they said that tornadoes could start showing up more often farther east than usual, and that's exactly what's happening. One of their top weather experts said people in the Mississippi and Tennessee valleys should get ready for a rough spring. There are more people living in these areas than in traditional tornado zones, and many of them live in mobile homes or buildings without basements, which puts them at more risk when big storms hit. A tornado is basically a spinning tube of super strong wind that comes down from storm clouds and touches the ground. They can be really dangerous. To figure out how strong a tornado is, scientists use something called the Enhanced Fujita Scale. It goes from EF0, which stands for the weakest tornado, to EF5. Such a tornado is crazy strong, tear your house apart strong. The main question is, why are tornadoes happening more in the east now? In the US, tornado season usually kicks off in March. That's when cold air from Canada bumps into warm, wet air coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. And boom, storms start to form. But this year, things are a bit different. Here's what's going on. There's a big patch of high pressure, basically a chunk of calm, warm air hanging over the southwest. That's keeping things more stable out west, so fewer thunderstorms as well as fewer tornadoes are expected there. So, tornadoes are shifting eastward. Meanwhile, the Gulf of Mexico is super warm this year, and that's helping storms form in the southeastern US. The warm water adds a lot of energy to the atmosphere, which can lead to stronger, more frequent storms in places like Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. Up north, around the Great Lakes and Northeast, it's staying cooler this spring. That means fewer big storms up there, at least for now. Now, let's get back to those devastating March storms. On March 14 and 15, a huge storm system blasted through parts of the central and southern US. This system brought 52 confirmed tornadoes, massive dust storms, and fast-moving wildfires. It all led to almost 1,100 canceled flights. About 150 million people were affected by this natural disaster. Two really strong tornadoes classified as EF4s hit Arkansas. The damage was incredible. One of those tornadoes, which hit a town called Diaz, had winds up to 190 miles per hour. That's insanely fast! For comparison, the average speed of a Formula One car is around 130 to 160 miles per hour. It was the first time in over 25 years that Arkansas got hit by two EF4s on the same day. Experts also recorded wind gusts moving at a speed of over 80 miles per hour in the southern plains. In Texas, dust storms led to fatal car crashes. Wildfires, caused and driven by the strong winds, burned through parts of Texas and Oklahoma. Oklahoma alone had more than 130 fires. So, what's next? Experts think the US could see between 1,300 and 1,450 tornadoes in 2025. That's way more than the usual 1,225. And it's not just about tornadoes. A warmer atmosphere can hold more moisture. That means heavier rains, more flash floods, and even more powerful storms. Basically, the formula is the following. Warmer oceans plus warmer air equals stormy weather, especially in the east and southeast. But even if you don't live in any of these areas, you can't feel completely at ease either. Experts say tornadoes and other natural disasters can happen pretty much anywhere in the US. The risk moves around depending on the time of year and the weather.
A hole about the size of Switzerland or South Carolina keeps popping up in the Antarctic ice. This opening is growing steadily, and it took scientists half a century to figure out why. They found the answer with the help of seals. The scientists first spotted this gap, called Maud Rise Polynia, in the Weddell Sea in 1974. They were about to close the case as the hole disappeared, but it popped out again in the following 2 years, and then only in 2016. The giant hole is near Maud Rise, an underwater mountain. This type of hole is a polynia, a rare patch of open water surrounded by thick sea ice. In Antarctica, when winter hits, the ocean surface freezes, and sea ice spreads out to cover an area about twice as big as the continental United States. Along the coast, openings in the sea ice pop up every year. This happens when powerful coastal winds blow off the continent and push the ice away. But it's a whole lot rarer for these openings to form way out over the open ocean, hundreds of miles from land, where the water is thousands of feet deep. Researchers from several universities teamed up to study the Maud Rise Polynia using computer models and satellite images. They even recruited some Antarctic seals to help out. These seals wore tiny helmets on their furry round heads with tracker sensors attached to them. Thanks to these sciencey seals, the team could collect water data from the source. After the research, the scientists discovered that the hole resulted from a complex mix of factors. The wind, ocean currents, and the special shape of the ocean floor all worked together, moving heat and salt up to the surface. In science talk, this swirling movement is called an Ekman transport. Ekman transport is what happens when wind messes with the surface of the ocean. When the wind blows across the water, it creates friction that grabs onto the top layer and pulls it along. Thanks to the Coriolis effect, which comes from Earth's spinning, the moving water gets pushed at a 90-degree angle from the wind's direction. So, instead of the water going exactly where the wind is pushing it, it drifts off at an angle. Which way it turns depends on which half of the planet you're on. In the northern hemisphere, the water shifts clockwise from the wind direction, and in the southern hemisphere, it shifts counterclockwise. Now, Ekman transport turned out to be the missing piece of the puzzle in the case of the Maud Rise hole. It helped balance the salt levels and keep mixing salt and heat up to the ocean surface. But as the sea ice melts, the surface water becomes less salty, which should stop the mixing. So the scientists realized something else had to be happening to keep the Paulownia open. There had to be another source of salt. Salt lowers the freezing point of water. To find out where this extra salt was coming from, the team dug back into their data and ran more computer models on the ocean. They found that swirling currents formed as the Weddell Current flows around Maud Rise. These currents carry salt up to the top of the underwater mountain. From there, Ekman transport kicks in. As the top layer of water moves away with the wind, water from deeper down rises to take its place. At Maud Rise, this upwelling water brings along the extra salty water built up around the seamount, and that's what helps keep the Paulownia from freezing over. Scientists follow any changes in Antarctica as they influence the rest of the world. Researchers at Stanford University used machine learning for the first time to study detailed satellite data showing how ice moves in the polar region. They combined huge amounts of real-world data with physics rules to understand the Antarctic ice sheet better. It's the biggest ice mass on Earth, almost twice as large as Australia. It acts like a giant sponge for the planet, storing fresh water as ice and stabilizing sea levels. Scientists used to rely on models based on lab experiments, but real Antarctic ice is way more complex, with cracks, air pockets, and different types of ice that behave unpredictably. Instead of trying to model every little detail, the team trained a machine learning model using data from 2007 to 2018. It looked at 5 major ice shelves and created new models showing the ice's resistance to flow. They found that near the land, the ice is compressed and behaves as in lab predictions. But farther out, the ice is stretched toward the ocean and acts differently depending on direction. Less than 5% of the ice shelf is compressed. The other 95% behaves in a way old models didn't fully explain. This research could seriously improve our predictions of how Antarctica might change in the future. Another recent piece of big scientific news from Antarctica changes the history of birds as we know it. For a long time, it was simple. Dinosaurs ruled the Earth until an asteroid hit 66 million years ago and wiped them all out, except for some avian dinosaurs, which eventually became birds like eagles and chickens. Now, scientists have found a headless fossil of a VYI on Vega Island in Antarctica. The fossil was 68 million years old, at least 2 million years older than the asteroid strike. Without a skull, it was unclear what modern birds VYI might be related to, and guesses included waterfowl and shorebirds. Nearly 20 years later, another expedition found a bird's skull in Antarctica. After careful study, scientists matched it to VYI and concluded it was an ancestor of modern water birds like loons and grebes. If it's all true, VYI is now the oldest known modern bird in fossil records. The skull had a long, pointed beak, a brain unlike any other Mesozoic bird, and signs of strong jaw muscles like mine, which were perfect for diving underwater and catching fish. The body fossil also had adaptations for underwater swimming, similar to modern diving birds. During the late Cretaceous period, Antarctica was a temperate rainforest, far from the Yucatan, so it could have become a safe haven during the asteroid disaster. So early modern birds might have survived there. When a giant iceberg, about the size of Chicago, broke off from Antarctica's massive ice shelf, scientists nearby did something no one had ever done before. They sailed straight over to check out the newly exposed seafloor. Studying the undersides of ice shelves is incredibly hard, but thanks to the iceberg A84, a 209 square mile patch of seafloor suddenly opened wide for exploration. The scientists deployed all their high-tech gear, including a remotely operated submersible and autonomous robots, to collect data about the seafloor and the properties of the water above it. Life exists almost everywhere in the ocean, from the bright, shallow waters to the pitch-black, volcanic deep sea. But the research team was really surprised to find such a diversity of life down there. They found a forest of sponges, giant sea spiders, icefish, octopuses, huge corals, anemones, and even glowing deep-sea jellyfish. Normally, deep-sea creatures get their nutrients from organic matter falling from the ocean surface. But under a 500-foot thick sheet of ice that had been there for who knows how long, that wasn't possible. That meant the creatures had to be getting their nutrients in some completely different way. To figure out how long this hidden ecosystem had been around, the scientists studied the sea sponges. Sponges grow extremely slowly, only about an inch per year, but the ones they found were huge, so they must have been growing there for decades or even centuries. The team is hoping that the mountain of ocean and environmental data they collected during the expedition will help them understand how these ecosystems managed to thrive in those conditions and maybe reveal some completely new species that no one has ever seen before.
In 2003, while following a grouper that suddenly disappeared below the waves in Chetumal Bay, Mexico, a lone fisherman discovered a mysterious hole hidden from sight. More than a decade later, his son returned with researchers to take a closer look. They started measuring. 100 feet, 160 feet, 425 feet. Still no bottom. As instruments descended into the dark, still water, the readings grew stranger. Warm, salty water where it shouldn't be. Currents rising from the darkness below. The latest readings showed over 1,372 feet and still no end in sight. Quiet, deep, and dangerous. It's Ta'am Ja, the latest and officially the deepest known blue hole on Earth, and it might be hiding something never seen before. Nature takes its time. Over thousands, sometimes millions of years, water slowly carves through underground rock. Then one day, the ceiling gives way, the ground collapses, and you're left with a massive hole. That's a sinkhole. Blue holes are just ancient sinkholes that filled with water as sea levels rose long ago. From above, they look like dark circular shadows, much darker than the water around them. All because they're super deep and sunlight can hardly reach the bottom. Some go hundreds of feet down and are almost perfectly vertical. Cut off from ocean currents, they create still, isolated environments that scientists are still trying to figure out. So, what makes Ta'am Ja unusual? Well, most famous blue holes like the Great Blue Hole in Belize are impossible to miss. You can spot them from a satellite. Ta'am Ja, on the other hand, is practically invisible. Like nature did its best to conceal it on purpose. Even with a drone flying right above it, it's barely noticeable. That's one reason it stayed hidden for so long. However, the true mystery became apparent after the researchers had done their initial scanning. In December 2023, scientists decided to explore the depths of Ta'am Ja by lowering something called a CTD profiler, which measures conductivity, temperature, and depth. As it went past 1,312 feet, they discovered something curious. Instead of cooling down, the water suddenly got warmer. It also became noticeably saltier, with readings that matched the open Caribbean Sea. But wait, Chetumal Bay is already part of the Caribbean, so what's the big deal? Well, Ta'am Ja is tucked far into the bay, and its depth is unusual for such a calm, protected environment. What surprises scientists is that water deep inside the sinkhole has the same temperature and salinity as the open ocean, even though it's cut off from it horizontally. What this means is that there could be subterranean tunnels or fractures connecting the deep hole to open seawater, not through the surface, but beneath the rock. Kind of like a secret pipe network, possibly dating back to the time of asteroid impacts. Tam Ja is located near the Chicxulub crater. It's where 66 million years ago, a giant meteor slammed into what is now the Yucatan Peninsula. It's widely believed to have caused a mass extinction event that wiped out dinosaurs. The asteroid didn't create Tam Ja, but it may have fractured the foundation, potentially making it easier for caves, tunnels, and eventually blue holes to form. Some speculate that these underwater connections could extend to other blue holes and hidden springs nearby. However, exploring Tam Ja is not just about maps and underwater tunnels. During the first expedition, researchers saw something strange. The water above Tam Ja was calm, while the rest of the bay had chaotic waves. Then, from the center of the hole, water started to rise upward, like a hidden spring gently exhaling. Not a geyser, not a splash, just a slow, steady surge, like something beneath had moved and pushed the water up. The fact that this happened only once made the following exploration intimidating for divers. They said that diving felt like encountering a living entity that moved and interacted with them in an intriguing and mystifying way. When you've got a place that deep, that dark, and completely cut off from the rest of the ocean, it's a door to the unknown. While it's probably too tight for the Lovecraftian sea gods to fit in there, it's not impossible that there could be species that no one's ever seen before, maybe even dangerous. It's speculative, but if the hole goes even deeper, any microbial life down there would likely be ancient and adapted to survive in extreme, hostile conditions. It doesn't have to be some scary sea creature. Even tiny, unfamiliar organisms could disrupt modern ecosystems if disturbed or released. There might be water from prehistoric times or something left behind from the asteroid impact that wiped out dinosaurs. This place might be hiding an entire ecosystem that's been sealed off for literally ages. And that matters because if life can survive in such a strange sealed-off place, it might survive in similar environments on moons like Europa or Enceladus. Also, some blue holes, like the Great Blue Hole, contain nasty stuff like clouds of toxic gas that can eat through equipment and even burn your skin. No wonder that divers felt like they were exploring something alive. Now, if you're wondering whether you can rent diving gear and actually go and explore this hole, the answer is no. Basic scuba gear requires certifications. Even dive shops won't rent to uncertified individuals, especially not for places like this. But even if certified, recreational divers can only reach a depth of about 130 feet. Going deeper takes special training, equipment, and a lot of caution. Even professionals rarely go beyond 1,000 feet, and when they do, it's with complicated, risky setups. At these depths, water pressure becomes a major obstacle, enough to crush most equipment not built specifically for it. So for now, Tam Ja remains a mystery that's impossible to uncover while diving. The next stop is most likely sending an ROV, a remotely operated submarine equipped with cameras, arms, and sensors. It can go much deeper than any diver and stay down there longer. ROVs could help uncover layers of fossils, strange chemical zones, and even clues about past climate change. In most of the blue holes, it's possible to find life, sponges, corals, or fish. But the deeper you go, the more oxygen levels drop, which makes it hard for organisms to survive, even though some microbes live there. Among the few creatures found, there are shelled single-celled organisms called foraminifera and tiny worm-like nematodes. It's precisely because of these microscopic animals that we speculate that if life can make it in Tam Ja's dark, salty, oxygen-free waters, maybe the same is true for other watery worlds. However, despite the enthusiasm around it, Tam Ja is almost unnervingly empty and devoid of larger life. Even near the upper layers where oxygen levels are decent, no fish, no crustaceans, not even a tiny shrimp have been observed. Just tiny organisms invisible to the unaided eye. No bikini bottom, but to be fair, we haven't reached the bottom yet. Which brings us to the speculation. Is it possible that ROVs will never reach the ocean floor? The hole might be deeper than we expect or shaped in a way that makes it hard for our equipment to get accurate readings. It might have side tunnels, ledges, or twists that throw things off. It could also be that the walls are too unstable or the pressure and water chemistry mess with the sensors. In a way, it's like playing an underwater level in slow motion with a robot that can grab things and get damaged. Thankfully, scientists have other options. They can use underwater drones that work on their own, drop cameras that record as they sink, or map the hole from above using sonar. There's more than one way to check its depths. Even with all our technology, there are still places on Earth we haven't explored. We've actually mapped more of Mars than the ocean floor. Spacecraft can scan the entire planet while seafloor mapping is slow, costly, and limited by darkness and pressure. Still, Tam Ja holds the record for the world's deepest blue hole, for now. We're flying over the foothills of the Andes and approaching one of the most mysterious archaeological finds in history. Along a rocky ridge in Peru, you may notice something strange. It's like a giant motorcycle has driven along a mountain and left a tire mark. However, the lower you go, the less it looks like a tire track. This is something even more bizarre. These are thousands of holes in the ground that could fit a space hopper. There are so many that they stretch in several rows along the mountainside. If you stand next to the first pit, you won't be able to see the last one in the distance. This place is called the Band of Holes, and for decades, scientists couldn't figure out what it was. However, it now seems that the mystery has been solved. It's unlikely that you'll be able to guess what it is, but there are some theories for you. A trail of small excavated holes about 1 mile long was created by an extraterrestrial civilization to communicate with space. These holes were dug by ancient peoples to collect water during the rain. A large country used these holes to collect taxes. In the past, geologists made these holes to collect condensation from the fog. Farmers dug those pits to grow crops there. Perhaps these are small trenches for people to sit in and defend themselves during enemy attacks. Or maybe they're graves. The mysterious trail is very similar to a geoglyph. Geoglyphs are giant patterns on the ground that can be seen from a great height. These patterns are created by removing the topsoil. Then workers place stones or plant trees on the bare land. So the Band of Holes is probably a geoglyph, but it's quite strange. It's not a pattern or a drawing, but just a straight line running through a mountainous area. So, what are your assumptions? Let's take a closer look at this thing. For the first time, this band of holes was noticed by aerial photographer Robert Shippey in 1931. So these pits have been there for quite some time. There are about 5,000 to 6,000 of them here. Some of them are dug into ground mounds, while others are in stone formations. This means that the creators didn't care about the quality of the soil. So, these pits were hardly used for growing crops. If these were graves, scientists would have found human remains there, but there was nothing like that. Besides, these pits are not deep enough to be graves. We've got to discard the idea that this road was made by inhabitants of another planet because, come on, that's just not serious. Then, what is it? A defensive line or markers for travelers? If people had fired arrows from these holes or stored ammunition there, there would surely be traces left, right? But there's nothing like that there. Nothing that would indicate conflicts and battles. But surely, there was something else there. Any artifacts? Oh yes. Scientists have found traces of corn and wild plants that were used to weave baskets. So they kept baskets with corn here? No, rather they arranged pits with these plants and then placed corn and other goods in them. Then it's something like a show window. That is, hundreds of people came here, dug holes, and put their goods inside. Thousands of other people passed by and chose what to buy. What if it's an ancient supermarket or shopping mall, and these pits were shelves? Right now, we are much closer to solving this mystery. Yes, people dug those pits in order to put goods inside and measure them. 1 pit of corn, 1 pit of cotton, 1 pit of hot pepper. It was something like a measurement system instead of pounds, but they didn't do it for trading. To fully understand what was happening here, we need to determine exactly where this market was located, in which country it was built, and who lived there. Near the Band of Holes, archaeologists have also discovered the remains of warehouses in the Inca civilization. There were pieces of pottery that indicated the period around the 15th century. It was during this period that the Inca civilization conquered the Chincha people. They were a pre-Columbian indigenous people living on the southwestern coast of what is now Peru. And in the 15th century, they encountered the Incas. They were an American Indian people who created a gigantic empire even before Columbus discovered America. The Incas inhabited the territories of Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile, Colombia, and Argentina. This civilization was famous for its advanced state structure, as well as for building extensive networks of roads and majestic cities. As an empire, the Inca lasted from the mid-15th to the mid-16th centuries, before getting conquered by the Spanish conquistadors. Okay, the picture is getting clearer. The Incas came to the Chinchi territory and conquered it. But why did they force them to dig these holes? Or did they not force anyone? To answer this question, let's look at what is nearby. Next to the Band of Holes was a large Inca administrative center. And not far from the pits, the Inca built a road leading to it. Negotiations, trade, calculations of profits, and the distribution of food and other goods likely took place at this center. The Incas didn't have money as we understand it. They didn't pay with coins, much less paper notes, but they needed to collect tribute from the conquered peoples. So they came up with a system for exchanging goods. The only problem was how to properly calculate the amount of corn, pumpkin, pepper, and other stuff. They didn't have scales, but they came up with another way. Holes. The Chinchi had to fill the pits with their goods, and then the Incas would collect them, taking them to the administrative center. The pits may have been distributed among individual Chinchi families. Each of them paid the Incas. That's how it happened. The Inca troops, which included guards, accountants, and officials, were traveling toward the administrative center. Along the way, they stopped at the Band of Holes, where people had already laid out their goods. The Incas loaded everything into carts and then took it to their base and counted it there. In a sense, this is what paying taxes looked like about 600 years ago. Okay, you've just found out the answer to one of the most confusing archaeological mysteries. Scientists have spent a lot of time and effort to crack it, but let's look at something else. Something that remains a mystery to the entire archaeological community. Perhaps you can solve the mystery of the Nazca lines. We don't have to go far from the Band of Holes. The giant geoglyph of the Nazca lines is also located in Peru, and that's what we've got here. Over 300 geometric shapes, 800 straight lines, and 70 images of animals and plants called biomorphs. The sizes of some of these biomorphs are as large as the Empire State Building, and some lines reach up to 30 miles. That is, someone painted such a giant geoglyph that it can be seen from space. But who made this? And the main question is, why? Scientists suggest that this was created by the Nazca people. Their peak and period of prosperity occurred from around 1 to 700 CE, so these lines are definitely over 1,000 years old. They appeared a long time ago, but people were only able to identify the landscape and the drawings after the advent of aviation. Commercial pilots flying over Peru in the 1930s saw the full scale of the geoglyphs for the first time, and since then, people have been trying to figure out their nature. Someone thought the lines had something to do with cartography or astronomy, but this theory didn't catch on because there was no evidence. To solve this mystery, we need to explore the area. The region where the Nazca lines are located is quite hot and dry. The people who lived there needed water since they only got 20 minutes of rain per year. Therefore, many archaeologists have suggested that this geoglyph was associated with rituals to summon rain. It was difficult for people to survive there without moisture. They believed that images of certain mythical creatures could bring rain. Anyway, this theory hasn't been proven yet. Scientists are still wondering. And what do you think? Lake Michigan is one of the largest and most mysterious freshwater lakes in the United States. And now, deep inside it, scientists have stumbled upon something unexplainable. Vast, round craters scattered all across the lake's floor. It all started in 2022. A team of researchers wanted to map the lake's bottom and look for some shipwrecks. At first, they were sure it's going to be just some typical rocky terrain or sandy patches. But what they saw on their sonar screens stopped them cold. Strange, circular shapes that looked almost too perfect to be natural. They were hiding about 500 feet beneath the surface, in places where the water turns dark and impenetrable. Those guys are huge, ranging from 300 to 600 feet wide. They also plunge nearly 40 feet deep. And there are dozens of them, neatly arranged like some footprints. But the team had no idea what these things were. Then, in August 2024, the mystery only deepened. Using a remotely operated vehicle, they got a closer look at these formations. There were about 40 of them. No one had ever seen anything quite like this before in the Great Lakes. What could have created those craters? Could they be ancient? Perhaps remnants of some geological event lost to time? If that's the case, it's weird how long these holes have likely been sitting there, undisturbed. Theories started popping up. One possibility was that they could be sinkholes or dolines. Those are basically holes that suddenly appear in the ground when the surface layer collapses. The rock beneath the surface, often made of limestone, gets slowly dissolved by water over time, creating voids underground. When the surface of those voids can no longer hold its own weight, it caves in, and this forms a hole. Think of it like when you poke a straw through the lid of a drink. Sinkholes can be small dips or huge, spanning up to 2,000 feet. They can happen gradually or all at once. Sometimes they can swallow entire cars or even buildings. And Lake Michigan sits on limestone bedrock. It erodes pretty easily when water flows through it. Sinkholes like these have already been found in Lake Huron, and they look kinda similar. But there are some plot holes, no pun intended, with this theory. For example, it's wild how they all would be so huge. It's also weird and pretty rare for sinkholes to occur in a lake bed. They also kinda resemble a straight pattern. They seem to extend generally southward, forming a loose line, which is pretty weird. If these are sinkholes, then they're definitely not playing the usual geological rules. Though it might be some new, unusual process at play beneath the lake's surface that we haven't discovered yet. There's another theory though. Glaciers. Glaciers are wild rivers of ice. They covered much of the Earth during the last ice age, and they're incredibly powerful. While they might move slowly, sometimes only a few inches per day, they have such immense weight that they can reshape entire landscapes over thousands of years. Glaciers can grind and scoop the land beneath them. They're basically like colossal bulldozers. Their weight, combined with the slow but steady movement, grounds down everything beneath them: rocks, soil, even bedrock. This can create deep gouges in the Earth's surface, called
glacial troughs. During the last ice age, there were lots of glaciers all over the northern US, including the Great Lakes region. If they moved across what is now Lake Michigan, they could have carved out these deep holes. Glaciers often move in a pretty straight path. As they move, they cause terrain to erode, but the resulting erosion varies based on terrain. Sometimes there are places where the bedrock is softer or fractured, and these places are more easily carved and crushed by the glacier. That could explain why some holes could be bigger and deeper than others. Harder bedrock is less affected. But usually this leads to rounded, crescent-shaped depressions known as chatter marks. Those marks are more like grooves rather than circular, big craters like those in Lake Michigan. Once the glaciers melted, the Great Lakes themselves formed. If the craters were formed by them, they may have filled with water, becoming part of the Michigan Lake. Though this theory is more like a speculation, so we need more evidence. But there's another layer to this mystery. The craters are not just curious geological formations. They actually may hold valuable clues about early life on Earth. Parts of Lake Michigan, especially dark ones, are relatively low in oxygen. It's like a lighter version of deep ocean environments that often have very little of this element. For example, hydrothermal vents deep in the ocean, underwater openings in the Earth's crust with some hot, mineral-rich water that are often very low in oxygen. But some organisms love places like these. For example, opossum shrimp. Teeny tiny shrimp-like creatures that love cold, deep waters. They get their name because they have a pouch to carry their young until they're ready to be on their own, like an opossum. Or deep-water sculpin fish, small bottom-dwelling fish that also enjoys cold lakes. They're well adapted to living in dark waters and usually stay close to the lake bed. And weird organisms like invasive quagga mussels, which kinda look like shells. These are small freshwater mussels that have spread there to the Great Lakes. They attach themselves to hard surfaces and can cause problems for ecosystems by competing with native species for food and space. All these guys could be in Lake Michigan, and even more. There might be microbes or even bacteria that are specially adapted to these harsh conditions, just like it was in Lake Huron. There's only a handful of creatures that could survive deep within these craters, and studying them could give us insight into how life once flourished in Earth's ancient, oxygen-poor oceans. That's because it's in places similar to these where some of the earliest life forms thrived. Early Earth had an atmosphere with little oxygen, although it was much more hot and ancient microbes adapted to this. The Great Lakes, especially Lake Michigan, have always had a bit of a ghostly reputation. Like even this mission was organized to study the shipwrecks. There were about 6,000 of them in the Great Lakes. Many of these wrecks are still sitting on the lake beds, preserved by the cold, fresh waters. And shipwrecks aren't the only strange things tied to the Great Lakes. Over the years, there have been stories of unexplained disappearances. Boats and even planes have vanished without a trace. The lakes, often calm on the surface, can suddenly turn dangerous with unpredictable storms and massive waves, leading to these mysterious events. Not even mentioning all the creepy stuff people noticed there over the centuries, such as ghostly lights above water or bizarre weather patterns like eerie, sudden fogs that seem to appear out of nowhere. In 2007, they even discovered some prehistoric structure that looks like Stonehenge there. Well, it was way smaller, but still. It lay about 40 feet below the surface in the heart of Grand Traverse Bay, and it's speculated to be about 9,000 years old, way older than Stonehenge. Looks like this is a print of those who lived in the area thousands of years ago. These massive stones are arranged in a careful, winding pattern stretching over a mile. They range in size from basketballs to compact cars. But one, in particular, stands out. A boulder 3.5 to 4 feet tall, 5 feet wide. It's etched with the image of a mastodon, a creature that roamed the Earth about 11,000 years ago before it went extinct. It probably sank there during the end of the last ice age we mentioned. This period had reshaped the region. This place is underwater now, but back in the day, it was still dry land. So the stones were probably created by people who lived there, though we're not sure why. Were they used as hunting blinds? Or was it some sort of an ancient calendar? Who knows? Only about 15% of the Great Lakes floors have been explored. Now, scientists are gearing up for a deeper dive into this mystery, both literally and figuratively. They want to analyze the lake beds surrounding the craters, hoping that maybe something in the environment around them might have caused them to appear. They have initiatives like Lakebed 2030. These missions should map the entire underwater landscape. This would help us learn tons of interesting stuff about Lake Michigan and our planet's past. Who knows what other secrets these dark waters hide? There's nothing around, just the eternal, endless whiteness of Greenland's snow and cold winds blowing into your face. Nothing hints at the impending catastrophe. You take another step and freeze in horror. An abyss is spreading at your feet, bottomless and dark. If you had made a bigger step, it would have swallowed you. That infamous Greenland's hole. It happened in the middle of the 2010s. A group of geologists were scanning the surface of Greenland's Hiawatha Glacier using radar when they spotted something very, very strange. It was a giant pit, more than 980 feet deep and almost 20 miles wide. That's big enough to fit inside Washington, D.C. or Paris. After staring at their radars for quite a while and scratching their heads, researchers decided to find out what could have made such a huge hole. Could it have been good old erosion, a raging volcano, an asteroid impact, a giant sandworm? Ugh, I might have gone a bit overboard with this worm idea, but you never know with these ancient glaciers. Anyway, in our case, one mystery seemed to lead to another, which had been puzzling scientists for decades. And to solve both of them, scientists needed something super common, but at the same time very important: quartz, one of the most abundant materials in Earth's crust. But before we dig deeper into this topic, let's make a small detour and talk about a pretty bizarre phenomenon called the Younger Dryas event. To see what it was like, we need to go deep into the past, as far back as 12,900 to 11,600 years ago. During that period, the planet became much colder, especially in Europe and North America. Now, let's talk a bit more about that weird climate change in the Northern Hemisphere. There are a few theories. One that involves a change in currents in the Atlantic Ocean. Another speaks about something large kicking tons of dust into the air and effectively blocking sunlight. The two most popular and likely hypotheses mention a volcanic eruption and an asteroid impact. Indeed, there was a volcanic eruption on the territory of modern-day Germany at around the right time. But there's also a probability that a space object struck the planet during this period too. And now let's get back to the hole scientists found in Greenland. When NASA's Ice Bridge program and Germany's Alfred Wegener Institute discovered it, it seemed they had finally found the reason for the Younger Dryas event. But was it really an asteroid that created that impressive pit and caused temperatures to drop all over the Northern Hemisphere? To test this theory, the researchers needed quartz. The thing is, in its pure form, quartz has a very simple structure. It's made from interlocking silicon-oxygen tetrahedra. Efficient and so pretty. Just look at these six-sided prismatic crystals. Since its structure is so simple and the components are so common, you can find quartz almost in any rock on the planet. At one point, magic happens. Larger rocks erode away, pushing out tiny bits of quartz sand. The scientists exploring the mysterious pit gathered the quartz sand that had been washed out from underneath the glacier. It was like looking at the rocks at the very bottom of the hole without having to actually get all the way down there. Very handy. So while examining the material, they discovered quartz grains with the telltale signs of terrible catastrophe. They had PDFs all over them. No, I'm not talking about the document format. PDFs stand for planar deformation features, and they look like lines etched into the crystal surface. These lines are a sign that you're holding shocked quartz. It forms under immense pressure, when the internal crystals are pushed out of alignment. But the most exciting thing here is that shocked quartz only appears under the influence of powerful forces, like massive impacts or terrifying explosions. In other words, finding this poor shocked quartz under the Hiawatha Glacier could be much needed proof that the hole was an enormous impact crater that formed when something equally enormous crash-landed there. Based on the size of the crater, this space object probably was a bit more than a mile across, which is twice the height of the Burj Khalifa Tower in Dubai. A meteorite that big would have looked 3 times as bright as the sun when traveling across the sky, and it would have hit Earth with an immense force. The impact would have been so great it'd have vaporized rock and thrown debris for hundreds of miles away. The sky would have filled with dust. It would have dimmed the sun and led to a temperature drop all over the planet. And guess what? The last part about decreasing temperatures got the researchers super excited, because it opened up a possibility that the impact could have been connected to the Younger Dryas event. To prove this idea, scientists decided to use quartz again. They examined it more closely, trying to date the impact. Well, they were in for an even greater shock. The Hiawatha crater turned out to be not 12,000, but 58 million years old. On the other hand, the researchers were disappointed that they hadn't been able to confirm their theory. The crater couldn't explain the Younger Dryas cold snap, but on the other hand, it was still an amazing discovery. Now, get ready for one final twist to this story, and it revolves around quartz again. Other scientists have recently discovered more deposits of shocked quartz all over what is now the eastern USA. It was hiding in sediment layers dating to just before the Younger Dryas. Interestingly, there aren't any craters around those sites whatsoever. But quartz can't lie. It provides evidence of a powerful explosion. It makes scientists think that their impact hypothesis might still be true, but instead of a collision, it could be an airburst. A massive comet could have broken up while entering Earth's atmosphere around 12,000 years ago, and the fragments could have exploded before reaching the ground. It would have caused catastrophic mass burning throughout the North American continent and messed with the climate so much that the Younger Dryas would have been triggered. Well, I guess we need to wait a bit longer for scientists to find some further proof of this hypothesis. But it doesn't mean we don't have any more curious phenomena to explore in Greenland. Take these fascinating holes. They sure are kinda smaller than the monster we were talking about. They're called mulins, and they carry surface meltwater all the way down to the base of the Greenland ice sheet. And they have prepared some surprises for us too. Apparently, they're way larger than we previously thought. That's what a recent study based on observation and first-hand exploration claims. Even more interesting, this high volume might influence the stability of the ginormous ice sheet in question, as well as the speed at which it's sliding towards the sea. Researchers think that increased water depth and pressure inside mulins might lubricate the base of the ice sheet, making it move faster. You know, the way an ice cube slides more easily on a thin film of melted water. Until recently, we knew too little about the real size of mulins and how much water they can hold. But now, we know that mulins can be giant. The team made 2 trips to the Greenland ice sheet in 2018 and 2019. And during each of them, they used ropes and climbing equipment to drop around 330 feet into 2 separate mulins, almost touching the water's surface. Those who did it described the experience as intimidating. Picture this. Your back is over the edge. All you see is bluish ice going down and blurring into blackness. And the only thing you hear is occasional sounds of crashing ice. It must be extremely unnerving.
Deep under the Indian Ocean, There's a giant patch where gravity doesn't work like on the rest of the planet. I mean, the gravitational pull works constantly, but Earth is not a regular sphere. Its surface is not smooth. It's covered with lumps and bumps like a potato, because our planet is not the same everywhere inside. Some parts are denser than others. Let's say you could pour water across Earth's surface. The shape this water would make is called a geoid, and it's like that because of the differences in materials inside the planet. That's why gravity isn't the same everywhere. And down there in the dark depths of the Indian Ocean, it's weaker than usual. That spot is something we consider a giant gravity hole that stretches more than 1 million square miles in size. It's roughly where the ocean floor sinks down in a giant depression. Scientists used ships and satellites to figure out this mystery. They realized the water level near India was lower because of this weak gravity spot. They're still not sure what made gravity become so weak in that area. But 2 Indian researchers realized everyone was trying to understand this, considering what that area looked like in the present. So they decided to go to the past. They used computers to make models of a virtual Earth and figured out that the answer could lie over 620 miles under the surface. That's where a part of an old ocean sank 30 million years ago, causing a hot melted rock to move around. And this mixture might have made gravity weak in that area. It's a really interesting idea, but it's still not the final answer. In 2018, a team of scientists from India went to the Indian Ocean with special machines to listen to the ground rumbling, similar to when you hear thunder. They found out there were hot streams of melted rock coming up from deep inside Earth. Could they be part of the reason why the gravity is weak there? We'll need more information to understand the issue better, maybe even go back further into the past. For instance, about 140 million years back, the land was all connected as a big piece called Gondwana. But then, India started moving away from it. While India was moving, an old ocean floor called the Tethys Sea sank into Earth's insides. These 2 scientists from India kept trying to solve the case, using computers to pretend to be going back in time. They checked how the land moved, as well as the mantle, which is basically a thick layer of hot, solid rock. The duo found out that a long time ago, there were hot, light rocks rising from deep inside Earth. These rocks created a spot where gravity was weak. This spot was like a big dent in the ocean floor. The more these rocks rose, the deeper the dent became. The first of these rising rocks popped out around 20 million years ago to the south of the weird gravity dent. As these rocks moved and went under the land, the dent got bigger and stronger. The 2 scientists think these rocks were pushed up by the sinking old ocean floor, like bubbles. This process disturbed something called the African blob. You gotta see this. Deep inside our planet, there are 2 very big blobs, like giant pieces of rock, as large as continents. One is under Africa, and the other is under the Pacific Ocean. These blobs have roots that start almost halfway, 1,800 miles, toward the center of Earth. And they're probably the place where columns of hot rock rise up from way down below. When these hot rock columns reach the surface, big volcanic eruptions happen, and we're talking about some really massive ones that might have even played a role in erasing dinosaurs from the face of the Earth a long time ago. So, we don't want these giant blobs to be disturbed. Anyway, not all scientists agree with the theory about why gravity doesn't do its job in this particular spot in the Indian Ocean, saying they need more proof to be sure about these rising rocks. The real answer might come from listening to Earth's rumbling. Plus, who knows if this gravity hole will stay there forever or move away. It depends on how Earth's mass will shift around. To see some changes might take a very, very long time, maybe even hundreds of millions of years. That's not the only region where gravity works in mysterious ways. Or at least, that's what it feels like when you see certain things around the world. Like, what if you saw rocks that don't sink, but can float on water for a very long time? They can even travel around for thousands of miles until they finally find a spot where they sink. Scientists figured out how this worked by using special X-rays to check the insides of these rocks. And these unusual rocks turned out to be very light and full of tiny holes. Researchers used wax to cover pieces of these rocks and went with a special X-ray method to look inside the rocks to see how much water and gas was there. The reason these rocks can float is because of something called surface tension, which is like a very thin, the size of a human hair, layer of air on the water's surface. This helps some animals, like lizards and insects, to really walk on water. And these floating rocks are not just cool because they travel, but also because they can actually help scientists find underwater volcano eruptions. They can also carry living things across oceans since they tend to collect some plants and other things rich in nutrients. So it's basically like a free cruise, until you sink down at some random spot. No iceberg needed. Here you have floating rocks. And in Death Valley in California, there's a strange phenomenon where big rocks move across a dry lake bed and leave trails behind them. People wondered how this was possible for 60 years until the case was solved. Some thought there must be strong winds moving these rocks, or maybe even ice. But scientists found these winds aren't really strong enough to move such big boulders. They placed cameras on cliffs near the rocks, even though they were hard to reach. They did this for 3 winters in a row to study the temperature, rain, and wind in the area. Their idea was that ice might lift the rocks and let the wind push them. To test this properly, they put a rock in a container with water and sand and froze it. When they later pushed the container, the rock moved like it was on ice. This experiment helped prove their theory. And what's interesting is that the rocky area in Death Valley is similar to one of Saturn's moons, Titan. So these weird things on our planet may help us understand other phenomena, even in space. The reverse waterfall in England is an example of a spot with weird gravity too. You can find it not far from Hayfield. It has water that looks more like a fountain than a waterfall, considering it goes up toward the sky. But it turns out gravity doesn't have anything to do here. It's just the wind. It's so strong that when the water falls down, it catches it and pushes it back up. But where does this constantly strong wind come from? You can see a similar thing at Hoover Dam in Nevada, US. Try to climb up the dam, 726.4 feet, and pour some water out of a bottle. Not working? Yep, the water won't flow down as it normally would. It will fly up. You'll have the same result if you throw some light object from the same height. You will get it back. And this happens because of the strong airflow too. So these things seem like gravity is messing up with us, but there's always a logical answer behind that. Hopefully, we'll get one for the gravity hole in the Indian Ocean too.
Well, we've been miscalling Uranus all this time. Actually, astronomers say we should be pronouncing it like Uranus, not Uranus. I can't say a different stress changes much though. However, things could have been different. Initially, Uranus was supposed to have the majestic king-like name of George, because astronomers wanted to name it after King George III. In the end, they changed their minds, and now, well, it's the punchline of every joke. If you take the total cost of launching a mission and divide it by the weight of the cargo, you'll see some pretty mind-blowing figures. According to specialists, back in 2016, it used to cost $10,000 to send just 1 pound of cargo into space. But now, prices have gone through the roof. Cygnus spacecraft's cargo costs over $43,000 per pound. while SpaceX's new carriers come in at around $27,000 per pound. Remember how hard it is to pay $5 for water at airports? Now, a bottle of water in space would cost somewhere between $9,000 and $43,000, and that's only to have it delivered in space. Now, as for water in space, well, it used to be considered a super rare thing. But in reality, there's water ice all over our solar system, so you don't have to buy those overpriced $43K water bottles. It's hanging out there in comets, asteroids, and even in hard-to-see craters on Mercury and the Moon. We're not sure if there's enough water in these places to support colonies of people, though. Mars also has ice at its poles, hiding under the surface dust and frost. Even smaller celestial bodies, like Saturn's moon Enceladus and dwarf planet Ceres, have ice. NASA scientists think there might be a chance of finding life on Jupiter's moon Europa. There might be liquid water beneath its icy shell. Europa, even though it's a lot smaller than Earth, might have an ocean deep enough to hold twice as much water as all the oceans on our planet combined. In 2009, scientists exploring a massive cloud of dust and gas in the center of our galaxy stumbled upon a fascinating surprise. They found ethyl formate within the cloud. This chemical is responsible for the delightful flavor of raspberries and has a rum-like scent. Furthermore, another nearby region is brimming with ethyl alcohol, the same type found in many beverages. In fact, there is enough alcohol in this region to provide every person on Earth with 300,000 pints of beer every day for the next billion years. Now, believe it or not, we do have a black hole on Earth. The thing is, creating an in-lab black hole was a sort of indispensable thing to do. Studying black holes in real space remains a distant dream, so it was only possible to create one to experiment with in a lab. A group of scientists in the Netherlands wanted to explore the mysterious Hawking radiation theory proposed by the iconic Stephen Hawking. Using atoms to mimic an event horizon, they orchestrated electrons, causing a surge in temperature that resembled flat spacetime. As particles moved through quantum fluctuations, a ring of infrared radiation appeared around the lab-grown black hole, mirroring Hawking's idea. So, if you totally understood what I just said, could you please explain it to me? Now, it may sound insane, but you can totally be allergic to the moon. Long story short, it was the final Apollo mission, and they brought back more rock samples than ever before. Plus, they had the first and only pro-scientist on the moon, Jack Schmitt. He was a geologist, and his rock samples helped scientists learn more about the moon's magnetic field and volcanic history. During the expeditions, it became evident that Jack Schmitt was allergic to moon dust. The gritty, sticky powder clung to his suit and his skin, causing irritation in his sinuses, nose, eyes, and throat for a couple of hours after he took his helmet off. Meanwhile, neutron stars are extremely dense, being basically just a bunch of neutrons squished into a super small space. If you had just a teaspoonful of this stuff, it would weigh more than the entire human population combined. And to match the density of a neutron star, we'd all have to squeeze into the space the size of a sugar cube. No thanks. When it comes to outer space, we tend to think that Earth and the Moon are pretty close together. But in reality, you can actually squeeze all the other planets of our solar system between Earth and the Moon. The average distance between them is about 240,000 miles. If you added up the diameters of the 7 planets, you'd still have some room to spare, about 5,000 miles. In 2011, scientists made a groundbreaking discovery of a massive reservoir of water in space. This water, equivalent to 140 trillion times all the water in Earth's oceans, could provide each person on our planet with a planet's worth of water 20,000 times over. This reservoir was located near a massive black hole drawing in matter and emitting energy, known as a quasar. The water was formed by energy waves colliding hydrogen and oxygen atoms together, and it was found around 12 billion light-years away. So, when the Curiosity Mars rover snapped its very first sunset picture in 2015, scientists were practically doing backflips from excitement. Turns out, sunsets on the red planet are anything but red. They're actually a stunning shade of blue. According to NASA, the reason behind this phenomenon is that the dust in Mars' atmosphere is like a magical filter that lets blue light shine through while blocking out those warm tones like yellow, orange, and red. Well, Venus is a slow spinner compared to Earth. It takes this planet 243 days to make a full rotation, and it spins in the opposite direction. But even though Venus takes longer to spin around, it zooms around the Sun in just 225 days because it's located so close. So, believe it or not, a year on Venus is actually shorter than its day. So, you might think that the night sky should be full of stars with no dark spaces at all. This idea is known as Olbers' paradox, named after German astronomer Heinrich Wilhelm Olbers. He thought that if the universe was infinite, unchanging, and timeless, then we should see stars everywhere we look. But it turns out that the universe is not infinite, unchanging, or timeless. Edwin Hubble discovered that the universe is actually expanding, and the leftover radiation from the Big Bang tells us that the universe is about 13.8 billion years old. Think of all the birthday candles. Ooh! So, the reason we don't see stars in every direction is because some stars are just too far away, or they haven't been around long enough for their light to travel all the way to us. During the Apollo 16 lunar mission, Ken Mattingly, the command module pilot, had a bit of a scare when he realized his wedding ring was missing. The whole crew frantically searched the spacecraft for it, but no luck. Finally, on day 9, while Mattingly was on a spacewalk, the ring was spotted floating out the hatch door. Charles Duke Jr. tried to grab it but missed. Luckily, it bounced off Mattingly's helmet into Duke's hands. It's cool they found the ring, but there are many other things people left up there. There's even a toothbrush floating around somewhere. Mercury is already the tiniest planet in our solar system, not counting Pluto, of course, and the second densest after Earth. And believe it or not, it's actually shrinking and getting denser. For a long time, scientists thought Earth was the only planet with tectonic activity. But that all changed when the Messenger spacecraft flew by Mercury, giving us a detailed scan of the whole planet. In 2016, Messenger discovered these cool cliff-like formations called fault scarps. Since they're still relatively small, scientists think they're pretty new, suggesting that Mercury is still contracting 4.5 billion years after the solar system began. And around 10 years ago, Australian astronaut Luca Parmitano went through a near-drowning experience during his spacewalk due to a water leak that went unaddressed. Nobody knew how it happened and why Luca ended up having water in his helmet. NASA was investigating the issue for months, but they were unable to determine the exact cause of the water entering Luca's helmet.
Did you used to make sandcastles at the beach when you were little? The structure had a moat, so you needed to dig deep. While holding a plastic shovel, you probably thought, how deep can I go? Well, this question motivated a group of scientists in the Far East. They have decided to dig the deepest hole in their home country, China. The drilling team's goal is to reach a depth of nearly 33,000 feet. That's about 1 1/10 times as deep as Mount Everest is tall. The location of the borehole is at the edge of the second largest shifting sand desert in the world, Taklamakan Desert. During a single day, air temperatures there can vary over 100 degrees. The drilling rig is impressive on its own. It weighs some 550 tons and is the height of a 20-story building. And it's pretty powerful, too. It can lift the equivalent of 120 adult elephants. These engineers aren't kidding. One of them compared the project to driving a big truck on 2 thin steel cables. That's why they expect the dig to last well over a year. Their ultimate goal is to drill downward through 10 layers of strata. These are horizontal layers of sedimentary rock. Sounds complicated? Just look at any exposed cliff and you'll notice how it has stripes of different colors. These are the strata I'm talking about. If we translate it from Latin to plain English, we'll get things that spread out. Makes sense. Each layer of rock represents a specific geological period. Remember Spielberg's 1993 blockbuster Jurassic Park? That's just one of these geological periods. It ended some 145 million years ago. But in Central Asia, scientists won't travel that far through time. They hope to reach the rock dating back to the Cretaceous. That's the geological period just after the Jurassic. It lasted until some 66 million years ago. This was the time when T-Rex still roamed North America. But why mount such a complicated operation in the first place? A single goal would be a waste of funds. That's why engineers in Central Asia have several objectives. They want to explore the planet's internal structure. This involves the search for natural resources, such as mineral deposits and oil. Another goal is to collect scientific data on earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The information will help researchers better predict these events in the future. So, hardcore science is behind this pioneering project, but it's not the first of its kind. Deep in the Arctic Circle lies the Kola Peninsula. And no, it doesn't have anything to do with the famous beverage company from Atlanta. This Kola is a region of great natural beauty, covered in forests and lakes, and an abandoned scientific research station. Inside this crumbling building, a rusty metal cap sticks out from the concrete. It doesn't look that impressive today, but this is the site of the deepest man-made hole on the planet. It is over 40,000 feet deep. That's deeper than the Mariana Trench, 36,201 feet, the deepest place on Earth. Scientists were drilling it for nearly a quarter of a century. The project started in 1970 and finally shut down in 1995. But if you travel to this region close to Norway, you wouldn't be impressed by the shaft. It is only 9 inches in diameter. It would be impossible to fall down such a narrow opening. And despite the figures, the hole is pretty shallow on a bigger scale. You see, the drill bit went through only a third of the Earth's crust. Let me explain. Remember those layers of strata? Yup, that's what our planet looks like on the inside. The 3 layers are the crust, the mantle, and the core. The crust accounts for only 1% of Earth's mass, and it's some 25 miles thick. But it holds nearly all life in the known universe. The deeper you go, the hotter it gets. At the place where the crust meets the mantle, Moho, temperatures max out at 752 degrees Fahrenheit. Ouch. There are 2 types of Earth's outermost shell, oceanic and continental. The crust is thinner under the ocean floor, so why not drill here? Well, the thinnest part is usually the deepest part of the ocean. That doesn't mean that people haven't tried to drill into the seabed. Americans attempted this off the coast of Mexico in 1961, Project Mohole. Drilling underwater was more expensive than anyone anticipated. A few meters of basalt, the researchers were able to bring up costs some $40 million in today's money. Not worth the effort, literally. The Kola superdeep borehole also burned money quickly. And that wasn't the only heat scientists had to face. The temperature at the top depth was a staggering 356 degrees Fahrenheit. That was double what the drilling team expected. Their machinery simply couldn't operate in that heat. At this depth, rocks behaved more like plastic than rock. If they had gone deeper, the stones would have the consistency of oversized caramels, but the drilling team gave their best. They even invented a new type of drill where only the tip rotated. There was also a lubricant to smoothen the process. This simply means they pumped a lot of pressured mud into the hole. Yet, they came short. Have scientists completely given up? Not by a long shot. The Japanese built a ship, Chikyu, 20 years ago to drill through the seabed, and they have invested a hefty sum in the project, $1 billion. The mission's goal was to drill into the Earth's crust where it's the thinnest. Under the ocean floor, it is less than 4 miles thick. If the Japanese team of scientists succeeds, it will be the first time humans recovered in situ mantle rocks. What is that? In situ is a Latin term that simply means in the original place. The only time we get to see what Earth's mantle looks like is during a volcanic eruption. A plume of hot mantle rising to the surface will form a volcano. You know the rest. But where are the Japanese researchers planning to drill? After all, they have a huge ship, so it could be anywhere in Earth's oceans. They've narrowed it down to 3 locations: Costa Rica, Hawaii, or Baja. In cartoons, characters often dig up a hole and end up in another country. The idea is that since our blue planet is round, and you dig straight down, you'll end up on the other side of the world. Sounds interesting, but this theory has no grounding in truth, pun intended. Science knows more about outer space than about what's underneath our feet. And digging won't get us far. The temperature at our planet's inner core exceeds 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The best heat-resistant materials humankind has developed, tantalum carbide and hafnium carbide, can withstand around 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit, good enough for building spacecraft. but not good enough for traveling to the center of our planet. But will Jules Verne's famous novel, Journey to the Center of the Earth, ever become a reality? For now, we can only imagine. The vessel that would take someone to the center of the Earth would first have to have great insulation. Then it would have to withstand a pressure 4,000 times stronger than at sea level. Let's talk about the finances. The cost of this imaginary mission would be astronomical. The good news is that you could pay it off with what you find underground. At a certain depth, 93 miles, you'll stumble upon diamonds. They form when all that heat and pressure alter the structure of carbon atoms. The final leg of the journey would take you through the Earth's core. The temperature here is the same as on the surface of the sun, and you'd be traveling through molten iron and nickel. But that's not the weirdest fact. The outer core has low gravity. The mass of our planet would be behind you, so the gravitational force would actually pull your vessel backward. Future travelers to the center of the Earth better have a supercharge button. That would be the only way to reach the planet's inner core. Let me take you to a place that seems to be out of this world. Life inside this cave has been isolated from the outside world for about 5.5 million years, and it does show. See for yourself. Due to such a long isolation, the conditions inside the Mobile Cave are like nowhere else on our planet. A unique ecosystem is flourishing there, even though there is a severe lack of sunlight inside the cave, and the air is toxic. The cave, located a few miles west of the Black Sea in Romania, was first discovered in 1986. Nowadays, you can only visit it if you have special permission. Plus, the central caverns are guarded naturally by narrow limestone tunnels and vertical shafts. So, if you're no stranger to claustrophobia, you'd probably better not enter this place. In the depth of the cave, the air has twice less oxygen than the air outside. Instead, it contains a lot of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. So not the freshest air you can breathe. It's also pitch black inside the cavern. But despite, or should I say, thanks to, this cocktail of extremely harsh conditions, the site is a true goldmine for biologists. Shockingly, life seems to be booming here. In a 1996 study, scientists identified 48 species, and 33 of them were unique to the cave. Most of the creatures inhabiting the cave are tiny, with long limbs and antennae that help them navigate in the dark. They have no vision and lack pigment, and it makes sense. Why would you need to be able to see if you live in total darkness? And why would you need to be pretty and colorful with no one to see you? Now, I'm going to take you to another cave. It's no less amazing, but looks very different. This is the Giant Crystal Cave, aka the Cave of the Crystals, in Mexico. These ginormous crystals were found in 2000 by a mining company after the water was pumped out of the cave. Two miners then saw the crystals after entering the drying cave on foot. These awe-inspiring crystals are actually massive gypsum pillars hidden 984 feet underground. They're anchored to the walls and the floor of the scorching hot cave. Scientists estimate that the crystals could have been already growing for 500,000 years. That's why many of them are so long and wide that you can walk across them. Unfortunately, visiting this wonder of nature is impossible at the moment. But maybe it's for the better, since the Giant Crystal Cave is a dangerous place that can easily turn into a trap. For tens of thousands of years, it was filled with groundwater, which was originally pushed upward into the opening by a magma chamber located in the depths of our planet. The magma under the cave kept the water hot, but eventually the temperature of the water dipped below 136 degrees Fahrenheit. As a result, the water started to fill with calcium and sulfate, whose particles began to recombine into gypsum. And then, white-tinted crystals took over the cave. And since they stayed underwater, they were able to keep growing. You don't have to fly to space to take a closer look at a black hole. Scientists have found something very similar to black holes in the southern Atlantic Ocean. A black hole has such an enormous gravitational pull that once something gets pulled inside, it doesn't have any chance to escape. Even light can't get out of a black hole. But ocean black holes seem to be almost as powerful as their space relatives. But instead of catching the light, they do the same with water. Ocean eddies are massive whirlpools that spin against the main current. They usually swirl billions of tons of water, and most of them are larger than a city. These whirlpools are so powerful that nothing trapped by them can escape. But the scariest thing is that you might not even notice heading into one of them. These things are so huge that you won't spot their boundaries until it's too late. When scientists started exploring ocean vortices with the help of satellites, they discovered the borders of several eddies. After that, they managed to prove that, mathematically, these whirlpools are the same as mysterious black holes in space. Massive eddies are surrounded by super-tight barriers where fluid moves in closed loops. Even water can't get out from the inside of these loops. That's why tight ocean vortices play the role of enormous containers. Water inside them can be totally different from the ocean surrounding an eddy. And I'm not only talking about its temperature. The salt content inside and outside a whirlpool often differs as well. On the thin Curonian spit splitting the Baltic Sea from the Curonian Lagoon, there is one of the most bizarre places on Earth. Locals call this area the Dancing Forest because pine trees in this forest have shockingly unusual shapes. They twist in spirals and circles along the ground. There are some theories why it could be happening, of course. Some people claim that huge amounts of positive and negative energies once clashed in that spot. More down-to-earth individuals believe that the reason is geological. Sandy soil in the area is too unstable to hold trees growing upright. The most popular is the idea that strong winds blowing from the water influence the shape of the trees. In any case, experts haven't come to the final conclusion yet. Look at these underwater crop circles. For the first time, they were spotted in 1995, close to southern Japan's coast. Local divers called these 7 feet wide structures mystery circles. The enigma had been plaguing many minds for almost 16 years until the culprit was finally caught. Imagine the researchers' surprise when it turned out to be a male pufferfish. The fish needs a bit more than a week to build one circle, and the aesthetics are obviously crucial. A male is swimming inside the circle, digging valleys in the sand with its fins. But that's not all. The fish also use shells and corals to decorate particular parts of their circles. This whole build-a-circle thing has a practical purpose as well. The way a male fish swims pushes the sand toward the center of the circle and creates a mound which later serves as a nest. The next mystery on our list is in the Caribbean. Just off the coast of Belize, there's a giant sinkhole. That's the Great Blue Hole. It's about 1,000 feet across and more than 400 feet deep. Once, a long, long time ago, this hole was a cave. But then rising waters filled it, making it collapse in on itself. The deeper you'll descend into the Great Hole's crystalline waters, the darker it will become. You'll see tons of stalactite-filled caves there, but entering them is extremely dangerous, unless you want to get hopelessly lost. Once you reach a depth of 50 feet, you'll notice that the water is shimmering. That's the invisible line dividing the sinkhole's salty top from the freshwater abyss. You might want to turn back right now. Who knows what you might come across in the murky depths. There was an old Amazonian legend that told about the river that was so hot that it boiled. And it was believed to be just a legend until Peruvian geoscientist Andres Russo questioned if the river could be real. All experts denied such a possibility. After all, hot rivers do exist, but only in the areas where there are volcanoes. As for the part of the country mentioned in the legend, there are no volcanoes in that region. But Andres Russo was too dedicated to give up. And in 2011, he finally located the river from the legends. The water in it was indeed steaming hot. Its temperature was 186 degrees Fahrenheit, not boiling, but pretty close to this point. But what shocked the researcher the most was the size of the river. One could think that the almost boiling water was the result of the activity of an underwater hot spring. But thermal pools are always small, while the river is 20 feet deep and flows for almost 4 miles. This is the only river of its kind on our planet. Do you remember when you were a kid and dug deep holes in the wet sand at the beach? You kept digging and digging, wondering where you'd end up if you never stopped. Well, wonder no more. This video has got you covered. Let's explore how far down you may go and what you can find there. And by the way, who knows, maybe someone's already used some fancy schmancy tech to dig all the way down to the planet's core, and we're just clueless about it. Let's dig in. At a depth of 2.3 feet, you'll find a whole lot of tunnels made by moles and rabbits. And get this, those moles are insane at digging. They can make a tunnel longer than 65 feet in just one day. If you dig a bit more, around 6 feet, you'll hit the standard burial depth, in Western culture, that is. Interestingly, the phrase 6 feet under didn't just appear out of nowhere. It was actually a rule implemented by the Mayor of London during the plague outbreak in 1665 to prevent the spread of infection. If you want to see something really gross, look out for deep burrowing earthworms at a depth of 10 feet. Some species, like Drawita grandis, can grow up to a whopping 3.5 feet long. Yuck! Did you know that a metal detector can only reach a maximum range of 20 feet? If you're trying to find something buried deeper than that, you're out of luck. Unless you've got a high-end detector that might be able to pick up a car at that depth. But if you're looking for something small or using a lower-end detector, forget about it. There was a guy named William Little, aka the Mole Man, who lived in London and dug himself a burrow 26 feet deep under his own house. He started way back in the 60s, and it took him over 40 years to dig the whole thing. And get this, the network of tunnels he made stretches over 65 feet away from the house. That's some serious digging. But if you want to see some real animal digging skills, go down almost 40 feet and you'll find the deepest burrow ever made by an animal. You would never guess who dug it. Ready? Nile crocodiles, that's who. If you ever find yourself 60 feet underground, take a look at Beijing's underground city. It's an emergency shelter that's basically a huge network of tunnels and rooms underneath China's capital city. How cool is that? Go down further to about 110 feet below ground in London. You'll find an underground farm where people grow veggies and herbs. Now, let's dive deeper. Literally, the Y40 diving pool in Italy is the deepest swimming pool in the world, and it goes 131 feet down. It's so deep that a free fall into its pit without water takes around 3 seconds. This is actually quite a lot, even if it doesn't sound like that. At about 280 feet underground in Cappadocia, Turkey, you'll find the Derinkuyu underground city, a vast ancient underground complex that presumably dates back to the 7th century. The channel tunnel that connects the UK with France is 377 feet deep. The roots of a wild fig tree growing at the Echo Caves in South Africa go down to 400 feet. And these are the deepest roots we know about. How about spending the night in the deepest hotel room in the world? It's located 508 feet underground at Sala Silver Mine in Sweden. If you're an adventurous runner, you might be interested to know that the deepest half marathon was held in 2004 in the Bochnia salt mine in Poland, at a depth of 695 feet. Are you a fan of engineering feats? The Seikon Tunnel in Japan is the deepest railway tunnel in the world, at a depth of 787 feet. And if you want to drive deep under the sea, you can do so in the Eiksund Tunnel in Norway, which reaches a depth of 942 feet. The deepest hand-dug water well in the world is at a depth of 1,286 feet. It's called Woodingdean Water Well, and it's located near Brighton in the UK. The well was dug in 1862, and most probably it's also the deepest hole dug without any technological aid. Kudos to everyone involved. If you're an adventurer, you might be interested in the deepest natural shaft in the world, which goes down to a depth of 2,110 feet. It's located in the Vrtoglavica cave in Slovenia. And a free fall down this shaft would last for a heart-stopping 11 seconds. In 2010, 33 Chilean miners were trapped at an even deeper depth of 2,297 feet in the San Jose copper and gold mine. They were stuck there for 69 days until they were finally rescued. Moving on, the deepest bat colony in the world resides at a depth of 3,800 feet in a zinc mine in New York. About 1,000 brown bats spend every winter there. Now, the deepest concert in history. The Finnish band Agonizer performed at a depth of 4,166 feet in a mine in Finland in 2007. Imagine rocking out in a venue that deep underground. The deepest coal mine is the Jindřich II mine in the Czech Republic. It was shut down in 1991, but it used to go all the way down to 4,920 feet. Now let's talk about the Grand Canyon. You might not think too much about it, but it's actually super deep. The deepest part of the canyon is about 5,920 feet down, and on average it's about 5,282 feet deep. If you're feeling adventurous, you might want to check out the Krubera Cave in Georgia. It goes down a whopping 7,185 feet, making it the deepest cave in the world. The deepest radio broadcast ever happened in Creighton Mine, Ontario, Canada, which is 7,677 feet below the Earth's surface, and it was held by CBC in 2005. And if you want to get even deeper, there's the Jinping Underground Laboratory in China, which is 8,202 feet underground and the deepest lab in the world. The Moab Khotsong gold mine in South Africa has the deepest single-shaft elevator in the world. It's located at a depth of 10,203 feet, and if you decide to take it, it'll take you 4.5 minutes to reach the bottom. Free fall into its shaft would take as much as 25 seconds. Deep in the Tautona mine in South Africa, at a depth of 11,811 feet, the deepest known multicellular organism has been found. Guess what it is? Obviously, a worm. Oh. Let's remain in the Tautona mine for another moment. Here you can reach the deepest human destination in the world. The temperature down there is a scorching 151 degree F, and the journey takes more than an hour. The oceanic crust has an average depth of almost 20,000 feet, which is also the depth at which the deepest known microbes were found in rocks below China's Songliao Basin. At a depth of about 36,000 feet, we find the Mariana Trench, the deepest point of the ocean. But people have gone even deeper than that. The Kola superdeep borehole was until recently the champion of the depths. It's the second deepest artificial hole on this planet, with a depth of 40,355 feet. The scientists once attempted to drill through Earth's crust in a massive project. However, they only managed to drill a third of the way before the drill couldn't operate anymore, due to the temperature reaching 356 degree F. This hole is not easily recognizable as its diameter is just 9 inches, and it looks unremarkable. Nevertheless, it is well covered to ensure people don't accidentally fall into it. If you were to drop a coin into the hole, it would take 50 seconds to hit the bottom. If you are wondering which artificial hole on Earth is the deepest, it's the Z44 Chavo oil and gas well. The depth of this hole is a staggering 40,604 feet, equivalent to the height of 15 Burj Khalifas stacked on top of each other. What's the deepest underground you would dare to go? Share your craziest ideas in the comments below.
You've heard of Dune, right? Giant sandworms, Zendaya and Timothée walking the desert in funky spacesuits fighting over spice. Well, welcome to Mount Baldi, our very own real-life version of Dune, minus the celebrities and giant worms. Instead of space drama, we're dealing with something even weirder. A dune that's literally eating people. Mount Baldi rises over Lake Michigan like a giant sandy mountain, looking totally normal. But under all that sand, there's a mystery that's got scientists scratching their heads. It all started on a sunny afternoon back in 2013, when a 6-year-old boy named Nathan was running up the dune. The boy was on vacation with his family and his best friend. They were excited to spend their days swimming in the lake's cold water and soaking in the warm sun. At some point, Nathan and his best friend got tired of swimming and decided to explore the dunes. Their idea of fun was to run up the slopes and then slide it all the way back down. When they were running uphill, Nathan took the lead and saw something weird. A hole. He leaned forward to check it out when the ground literally swallowed him whole. It happened too fast. Nathan was gone before his friend got there. His family freaked out, and for 3 long hours, search teams desperately tried to find him. Don't worry, the guy survived, even though his chances were slim. And since then, scientists have been trying to understand what on earth caused this accident. The weird part here is that dunes like Mount Baldi shouldn't have holes or empty spaces underneath them. Dunes are supposed to be solid piles of sand. For sinkholes to happen, there needs to be running water below ground. This water usually weakens the soil up until the point where the ground breaks beneath the surface and a huge hole opens up. That afternoon that Nathan disappeared, A geologist happened to be passing by and was completely shook by what had happened. Erin Argillan, who tried helping with the rescue, said she never heard of anything like that in her years of studying dunes. She was determined to figure it out though, so she went back to Mount Baldi and used ground-penetrating radar to scan the dune. That's when she saw the problem was way bigger than expected. Bizarrely enough, there were another 66 hidden holes just waiting to collapse. It was like Mount Baldi was a dune full of invisible traps, and no one had any clue why. Argillan started to speculate what could possibly explain this phenomenon. One clue rests on the history of Mount Baldi. You see, over the years, sand was taken from Mount Baldi for industrial purposes, like making mason jars and other glass products. Some scientists think that removing all that sand disturbed the natural structure of the dune. This disruption could have caused the dune to weaken, making it unstable and creating the weird hollow pockets we're seeing now. But this theory doesn't explain why the sinkholes are only happening now or why they disappear so quickly. These sinkholes sort of look like those old Hollywood movies quicksand. They open up, sometimes swallow something or someone, then they disappear. But real quicksand is not as evil as the ones in the movies. It's a slushy mix of sand and water that looks solid from above, but it collapses into a more liquid form if a heavy object disturbs it. Another theory says it's probably because of fallen trees, buried long ago under layers of sand. These trees could be decaying and leaving behind empty spaces. If the sand shifts just right, it could cause these gaps to collapse, forming sinkholes. The problem with this theory goes back to the disappearing sinkholes. If it were true, the holes would remain open. This next deep hole seems to come out of a totally different Hollywood era. Something like if Jurassic Park met Aquaman. Behold, the famous Sawmill Sink. This wonder of nature is a deep, mysterious blue hole in the Bahamas. Think of it as a giant underwater sinkhole that goes down about 120 feet, filled with fresh and salty water. It's a natural wonder by itself, but also because scientists started to uncover perfectly preserved fossils and ancient bones in it. We're talking extinct species like giant tortoises, crocodiles, and even an ancient rat the size of your backpack. Back in 2004, scientists hit the jackpot when they dove down into the depths of Sawmill Sink and pulled up fossils that have been there for thousands of years. You may think they did not preserve well, but no. The water there is so cold and low on oxygen that everything stayed in tip-top shape, like it had been frozen. The scientists didn't just find long-lost animals, but human remains too. These bones composed a human tibia and sacrum of a Lucayan person, the indigenous folks who lived in the Bahamas about 1,000 years ago. This discovery shocked archaeologists because it gave them a major clue into the lives of the Bahamas' original inhabitants. And speaking of holes, this group of scientists tried digging an insanely deep one just to hear Mother Earth's heartbeat. Hang in there, I'll explain. It started back in 1987, when the Germans decided to dig the KTB borehole in Bavaria. A borehole is a deep hole in the ground used to find oil. These guys managed to dig almost 30,000 feet below the ground. Their mission was to understand more about our planet's inner workings, like tectonic movements, temperature changes, and seismic activity. But as they dug deeper, they were hit with a few surprises. Instead of finding solid, stable rock, they encountered fluids and gas seeping into the hole, which threw off everything they thought they knew. The heat also spiked way faster than expected, making scientists rethink their theories on how temperature behaves deep down. They actually had to stop digging because they reached the insane temperature of 572 Fahrenheit. This whole experiment sparked the interest of a Dutch artist who decided to tag along and do an experiment of her own. She used a geophone, which is an instrument that converts ground movements to voltage, and she recorded sound waves from the hole. When she got the results, She was shocked to hear that the sounds they recorded resembled a distant thunder and almost sounded like a real heartbeat. Okay, so this diamond mine could easily be scouted as a location for some Star Wars sequel, and I'm not even joking. Located way up in the remote wilderness of northern Canada, surrounded by ice, snow, and a lake, sits the Diavik Diamond Mine. Since opening in 2003, Diavik has produced over 100 million carats of high-quality diamonds. But what really makes Diavik special is how it's powered, in part by a wind farm. Yep, they managed to do that even in the cold tundra. When Diavik first opened, it was all about open-pit mining. But now they've moved underground, digging deeper to find those hidden treasures. And to make it all work, they had to build a dike system to stop the lake from flooding the mine. Pretty intense, right? And then there's the Monticello Dam, which sounds pretty Italian, but it's actually located in Napa Valley, California. This beauty was built between 1953 and 1957, and it created Lake Berryessa, which holds the record for the 7th largest man-made lake in California. The lake covers approximately 20,000 acres, which is about as big as Disney World in Florida. And although this lake works as a water reservoir for the northern region of the San Francisco Bay Area, that's not its most important feature. Its most unique feature is known as the Glory Hole. The Glory Hole is a morning glory type spillway which helps to drain the excess water from the dam. It has a diameter of 72 feet at the top, and it can drain an astonishing 48,000 cubic feet of water per second when the lake reaches its maximum capacity. If you thought about swimming around in the lake, forget it. It's pretty fascinating, but it was forbidden since someone swam too close to it in '97 and was swept inside the spillway. Yikes.
In July 1990, 4 Czech guys decided to go on an adventure to find the Mongolian death worm, a creature that might have inspired the monster you've seen in the movie Doom. They say it lives somewhere deep in the Gobi Desert, so they flew to Mongolia, hopped into an ATV, and hired some local guides to help them. All that to meet a creature that is up to 6 feet long, can spit acid that could melt anything, and is capable of shooting electricity at those it doesn't like. Legend says that these friendly guys spend most of their days hiding underneath the sandy dunes, but they'd like to come out during the wetter months of June and July. So the timing for a spotting was simply perfect. But the crew needed to figure out how to lure the creature. Sadly for them, no one knew what the giant worm liked to eat. So they built a thumper, which is a machine that made rhythmic pounding noises. They were hoping it would call the worm out of the ground. For 2 months, they searched the vast desert, crossing dunes and rocky plains, looking for any sign of the creature. But alas, it didn't really work out. Ivan McCurley, who was the leader of the 1990 expedition, came back to Gobi Desert again. He once tried to attract the megaworm with blasts, and the second time he used a small airplane to scout the dunes. Over the years, groups from America, Britain, and New Zealand organized big expeditions to the Gobi Desert to try and find the creature. Many others came from all around the world on their own and found nothing. The people in the West first found out about the megaworm of the Gobi Desert thanks to an American paleontologist, Roy Chapman Andrews. This brave man was probably the inspiration for Indiana Jones. In 1926, he wrote about the creature in his book. At a meeting with Mongolian leaders, Andrews heard detailed descriptions of the creature, even though none of them had ever seen it themselves. One of them described it as looking like a sausage, about 2 feet long, with no head or legs. According to him, the worm was so venomous that just touching it could instantly take your life, and it lived in the loneliest parts of the Gobi Desert. Andrews didn't think the creature was real, but he shared these stories again in another book. In May 2005, 4 friends from Great Britain who search for monsters professionally decided to try their luck. They made drawings of the worm and hired local people to hand out flyers all over the Gobi Desert. These flyers offered a reward to anyone who could give information about the worm or even bring them a specimen. They thought loud sounds that other explorers tried would scare the beast away. Some told them it likes damp conditions, so they came up with a plan to block streams of water to create wet areas that would lure the worm out. Their plan didn't work because it was too hard to build dams in the desert. They ended up using small traps, but didn't find any actual proof that the worm existed. But they did meet locals who shared interesting stories about strange creatures they had seen over 70 years. Over the years, stories of the monster spread around the world. In some of them, it's only 1 foot long. In others, it's as large as a human. It's white-gray or scaly and brown, or maybe fleshy and bright red. Someone said it resembled a snake, or maybe a caterpillar, or maybe it has wings and can fly. And some believe it could be a supernatural evil being without a body. Maybe the stories are so different, and the search operations are so fruitless, because the creature doesn't even exist. Or it could be one of many cryptids. Those creatures like Bigfoot, Yeti, the Loch Ness Monster, their existence has yet to be proven. In 1983, one scientist who was visiting the region heard that an old man had managed to catch the mysterious worm. He also learned there was a nest nearby. The scientist bravely approached the hole in the sand and put his hand inside. A giant creature dragged him in, and he was never seen again. Just kidding. He actually found a Tartar sand boa inside. It's a chunky, burrowing, non-venomous snake that has small eyes and gray-brown scales. He showed it to the locals to verify if it was the monster, and supposedly all of them said yes. Most Mongolians who know about the worm still believe it's real. Now, even though people call our supposed monster a worm, it's just what it sounds like in the English translation. Many Mongol cultures have used this word for centuries to refer to any animals they thought to be really dangerous, especially snakes, even non-venomous ones. So, it doesn't have to be a literal worm after all. Worms are soft and squishy, but a creature living in the harsh Gobi Desert would need to be tougher, more like a snake or a type of lizard without legs. Neither of these creatures can shoot electricity or spit acid like they say the death worm does. But some snakes, like cobras, can spit venom that's dangerous for people. If it were real, the creature would have a backbone, and explorers searching for it would likely find some bones or evidence left behind. And there are actually fossil remains all over the Gobi Desert. Scientists found representatives of over 80 dino groups here over the last almost 100 years. It all started with the world's first dinosaur egg nests. This discovery changed all the scientists knew about dinos. It was the first proof they laid eggs. In the following 2 years, the same expedition team unearthed over 100 dinosaurs and took them to the American Museum of Natural History, where you can still see them today. Some of them were swimming around in the Cretaceous Sea that used to be here about 71 million years ago. They resembled modern birds. The mystery of the megaworm is still unsolved, but there used to be another mystery scientists finally managed to explain. Back in the 13th century, a famous traveler, Marco Polo, not the guy from the swimming pool game, crossed the Gobi Desert. He thought he could hear mysterious noises, like the sounds of musical instruments such as drums. He wrote about it in his book and believed he might be hearing the voices of restless spirits. Scientists call these noises singing sands or booming sands. Unlike the squeaky sound you might hear when walking on a sandy beach, these desert sounds are much louder, like a musical instrument playing deep, haunting notes. Over the years, people came up with all kinds of ideas about what caused the sounds, like underground water or winds making the sand vibrate. Not all dunes can do this, and scientists wanted to figure out why. Sometimes the winds might cause a small avalanche on the side of a dune, and then you can hear the magical sound start. But this is rare. So, to study it, scientists had to help the dunes sing. They climbed to the top of a dune and slid down on their backs, using their hands and feet to push sand down. As the sand tumbled, the sound started softly and got louder. They could even feel the vibrations with their hands. So they found out that for a dune to sing, a few special things need to happen. The grains of sand must be the right shape. The dune has to be big, and the sand must be very dry, so no singing after it rains. Inside the dune, there's a hard layer of packed sand that acts like a giant speaker. This layer bounces the sound waves back and forth, makes the noise louder and louder, and creates a haunting melody that can fill the desert air. In other words, the dunes can play tunes. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't help myself with that one. You're wandering across the Sahara Desert, and all you can see around is endless sand. And then, all of a sudden, you spot this mark in the sand. The wisest thing to do is run away from that spot as fast as you can. Because if you squint and focus really well, you'll realize that you're looking at a Saharan horned viper hiding in the sand, waiting for its next meal. Paradoxically, the bite of the snake has never led to human fatalities. But then, why should you run away? Well, let's find out. The Saharan horned viper is one of the desert's most famous snakes and a pro at hiding in plain sight. The Cerastes cerastes, which is this snake's scientific name, is one of the most well-camouflaged creatures in the entire animal kingdom. It can measure between 12 and 24 inches in length on average, but the biggest specimens can stretch up to a whopping 33 inches, nearly 3 feet. And while that might not seem too long, trust me, you wouldn't want one to sneak up on you. Interestingly, the females of this species are larger than the males, which is rare in snakes and gives the females an even more intimidating presence. But the truly unique thing about this viper is, of course, those creepy horns, one above each eye. They give the reptile a dragon-like look, setting it apart from most other desert vipers. Not all Saharan horned vipers have these horns. Some have small nubs or none at all. You could say it's a bit of a genetic lottery. Still, these horns add to the viper's threatening vibe and make it look even more fearsome. But it's not just their horns or size that makes them fascinating. Males and females look different beyond just their size. Males have noticeably larger heads and eyes than females. And compared to their relative, Saharan horned vipers have bigger heads and are more likely to sport these spooky horns. Now, let's talk about what makes the Saharan horned viper a true master of survival: its uncanny ability to blend into the sands. This viper's coloration matches the Sahara's various shades: yellow, pale gray, pinkish, reddish, or light brown. It has an intricate pattern along its back, with dark, semi-rectangular patches that sometimes fuse into crossbars. At the same time, the underbelly is white, and the tail often has a black tip. And it's another trick. Some animals can mistake this feature for a scorpion stinger. This camouflage is the viper's main line of defense and its tool for hunting. The reptile doesn't just slither around in plain view. Instead, it buries itself in the sand. The viper can wiggle its body under the soft desert sand, leaving only its eyes and nostrils visible. Imagine a creature so skilled at hiding that it can lay completely flat and practically disappear, waiting for hours until an unsuspecting mouse or lizard or human wanders by. During the day, the viper also takes shelter under rocks and in burrows left by other animals. Sometimes it even simply hides in the shade of bushes. For a creature that looks so fierce, the Saharan horned viper is surprisingly even-tempered. It won't waste its venom on a threat it can avoid, preferring instead to lie still or try to hide. But when it feels truly threatened, the snake gives a truly dramatic warning. It rubs its coils together, producing a distinctive hissing and crackling sound that lets you know it's ready to strike. And if you ignore that warning, well, this viper's bite is loaded with toxic venom that can be quite dangerous. That's why handling such snakes can be a fatal mistake, as two unlucky handlers in Europe once discovered. Both men were bitten by captive Saharan horned vipers, and the bites caused extreme swelling, blood clotting issues, and even kidney failure. The venom in these bites has special compounds that mess with blood clotting, attack kidneys, and can cause serious internal bleeding. The best treatment for these bites is specific antivenom, but it's clear that the bite of a Saharan horned viper is nothing to take lightly. Now here's another astonishing fact about this reptile. When it does move, the Saharan horned viper doesn't slither in the usual way. Instead, it uses a unique style called sidewinding. Picture the animal lifting a loop of its body, moving that loop forward, and then pulling the rest along behind. This sideways walking lets the snake move across the hot sand without letting its belly touch the ground for too long. In a place as hot as the Sahara, this technique isn't just cool looking, it's essential for survival. While the Saharan horned viper is a champion of desert camouflage, it has some serious competition in the camouflage department. Around the world, there are other snakes that have protected the art of blending into their surroundings to catch prey and avoid being eaten themselves. Like the eastern brown snake, an Australian snake that is one of the most venomous in the world. Its brown color lets it blend in with rocks and soil, making it extremely hard to spot until you're practically on top of it. A bite from the snake can be fatal in less than an hour. Or the eastern copperhead, found in the forests of the U.S. This snake's pale tan and pinkish colors blend in perfectly with autumn leaves. It often freezes in place rather than slithering away, which leads to many accidental bites. Its venom usually isn't fatal, but it's painful, and since the reptile hides so well, encounters are common. The Perengaise adder from Angola and Namibia loves to hide in the sand like the Saharan horned viper. It mostly eats lizards, and its sandy-color scales make it almost impossible to see. Thankfully, its bite isn't too dangerous for humans. Now look at this terrifying creature. It's the timber rattlesnake. This rattlesnake lives in the lush forests of the U.S. and uses its colors to blend into the forest floor. You might not see it, but if you hear its rattle, take a step back since its venom is potent. The Pacific gopher snake, found on the west coast of the U.S., can grow up to 7 feet long. The only plus in this situation is that this reptile is non-venomous. It camouflages well in forests and fields, but is harmless to people. Just don't scare it, or you'll get a bite, which is still unpleasant. In the rocky terrains of California and Oregon, you might meet the northern Pacific rattlesnake, which likes blending into dark brown and gold rocks. Hearing a rattle is often your only warning, since this dangerous snake is nearby. These neck snakes aren't particularly dangerous, but they're unsurpassed masters of camouflage. The smooth green snake has a bright green color that matches the leaves in trees and grass, which makes it practically invisible among foliage. The common European viper prefers hiding among leaves and shrubs, and the harmless common garter snake has colors that blend in with dirt and grass. Keep in mind, though, that even though all these snakes are not venomous, they can still give a painful nip. Oh, and I can't but mention the massive reticulated python. Even though it can grow over 21 feet, this South Asian snake is expert at hiding among leaves and shadows. It's one of the only snakes known to occasionally hunt humans, so tread carefully in its territory. Now, in the wild, snakes like the Saharan horned viper rely on camouflage to hunt and avoid being hunted. They might be blending into leaves, sand, or rocks, but in any case, these snakes have evolved to stay hidden from predators and prey alike. The desert viper buries itself to stay cool and catch food, while forest snakes blend in to hunt in silence or avoid curious humans. For them all, staying hidden isn't just a matter of survival, it's a huge advantage. So, next time you're out in nature, remember that you might be walking right past a hidden hunter, watching you from the shadows with a quiet, horrifying patience. Have fun out there.
Something exciting and kinda unexpected popped out among the rocks of the Inca Valley in Peru. The bones of a really old whale that lived almost 40 million years ago. At first, no one was really impressed because the bones they found were big and weirdly shaped, so people just thought they were looking at giant boulders. I mean, that's cool too, but things got way better when they realized those were the remains of a very large ancient animal that roamed along the coast of ancient Peru. Plus, it was probably the heaviest creature that ever lived. Sorry, blue whale, I know you worked hard to get to the top. The length of over 100 feet and weight of more than 200 tons brought you the status of the biggest animal on our planet. But it seems you've held the title long enough. Time to hand it over to our next candidate, and that one's really gigantic. This ocean beast was probably shorter than the blue whale, but heavier, with a weight that could be between 93 tons and 370 tons. If it's closer to the higher number, it'll make Peracetus the biggest animal ever known to have lived on Earth. And it seems its weight was the result of having extremely thick, dense bones. You can see such bones today in manatees or some other early whales. Dense bones are a great tool for such marine mammals. This feature makes them heavy and allows them to stay submerged most of the time. But at the same time, if their body was too heavy, they would end up sinking all the time and they would waste too much energy to move back up to the surface. So, to avoid sinking, marine mammals need to have enough lighter tissues, like muscles and fat, to help them float in the water without using too much energy. Now, scientists didn't have the whole skeleton, which makes it hard to tell how big the animal was, but they used the ratio of the heavy bones to the lighter tissues in other marine mammals to estimate the overall weight of this giant ancient whale. Experts found these fossils about 13 years ago and spent the next decade freeing the whale from the rock. Its anatomy and age showed this whale was a cousin of Basilosaurus, a whale that had a long snout full of sharp teeth, and a sleek body similar to that of an eel. Even if Peracetus wasn't bigger than the blue whale, it was still a giant that ruled the ocean depths. Unlike modern whales, there's a possibility that this ancient fellow was a predator that liked to go after bigger prey. And this also changes how we see the history of whales. Scientists used to think these magnificent creatures became really big about 5 million years ago when they started eating lots of small creatures. But here's the proof that giant whales existed even before that. But it's still unclear how this whale managed to find enough food to sustain its enormous body. Plus, it's still hard to tell what exactly this ancient creature had on its menu. It was pretty large and not such a fast swimmer, so it's possible it searched for food in shallow waters. Then it probably ate crustaceans, clams, or some other small animals hiding in the sand. One theory says it was a scavenger, which basically means it munched on remains of everything that would come its way. It's not so unusual to find marine animals in deserts. Many of these regions used to be covered with water anyway. The Sahara in Africa is a perfect example. About 50 to 100 million years ago, this was not a dry desert, but a shallow saltwater body called the Trans-Saharan Seaway. The land is not wet there anymore, of course, but people who lived in that area knew about it because they used to find old shells across the desert. The sea was about 164 feet deep. That sounds enough for a nice swim. Some would say this area looked like modern Puerto Rico, with lots of sun and shallow water. Mangrove forests were a common thing as well as seafloors covered with mollusks, like snails and clams. The marine sediment that was left behind after the sea had dried up is full of different fossils. And the animal that lived in that ancient underwater world didn't look friendly. Plus, they were much bigger than their relatives from modern times, so a regular-sized human would end up as a snack, not even a whole meal. Normally, when animals live on small islands, they can become much bigger than their relatives from the mainland. This is something we call island gigantism, and it happens because there are more resources or fewer predators on islands. Maybe the same thing happened in the Trans-Saharan Seaway. Even though it wasn't an actual island, the water moved in and out, which created little pockets of water. And specific conditions in these pockets might have helped animals grow bigger. So we're talking about giant sea snakes, catfish, and fish that no longer exist today. One had incredibly strong jaws, and the animal used them to eat hard things and even crush shells. Their teeth showed they were fierce predators other animals had every reason to be afraid of. They went through some changes when it came to diet, similar to some types of piranhas. And the competition to get to the top of the food chain wasn't a joke. Not when there were also such large predators as sharks, crocodiles, and ancient relatives of elephants. Sahara went through different phases. If you could use a time machine and take a peek at Earth's largest hot desert as it was about 6,000 years ago, you wouldn't have to struggle with sand and heat. You'd have a nice walk through a green and pretty lush place. In the past, people who lived in that area didn't leave drawings on cave walls that showed camels, sand dunes, and scorpions. All those things you'd see in today's Sahara. Instead, they drew crocodiles. That's additional evidence that the Sahara used to have a lot of water and plants enough to support these big yet scary animals. Around 3 billion years ago, Earth might have been mostly covered with water. Today, it's about 71% of its surface, but it seems that our planet used to be a giant ocean world with no continents at all, just some scattered islands. Scientists studied special rocks in Western Australia that formed in a place deep under the ocean called a hydrothermal vent system. To explain this better, it's important to mention two common oxygen types, O16 and O18. O18 is heavier because it has extra neutrons. O16 evaporates from water more easily, and as researchers studied an old ocean floor, they found a lot of O18, more than in today's oceans. This way, they realized ancient Earth had less dry land than Earth today. Australia is a good spot to conduct these studies because a long time ago, it also used to be a beautiful place with large animals and lush rainforests. But as time went by, the land became drier and Australia had more deserts formed, such as the Great Victoria Desert. Rainforest remained only on the edges of the continent. What happens with deserts across the globe is called desertification. That's when land that used to be good for growing things turns into a desert or something similar. Our planet changes over time, together with its climate. But desertification also happens because of human activities, like mining, farming, and building cities. And when land turns into a desert, it's a problem because it can't support people and animals anymore. Food doesn't grow there. There's not enough clean water, and animals lose their homes. To help with this problem, there's a plan many countries agreed to. They decided to work with farmers to take care of the land, fix damaged areas, and manage water better. All in all, to make our planet a better place for life.
You're walking along a hot desert under the scorching sun. You run out of supplies. There's no more water. You dream about rain, but there are no clouds in the sky. With each step, you lose more and more strength and fall. You notice a small pond nearby. Is it real water or just a mirage? You can't get to your feet, so you crawl there. The water is getting closer by the minute, but not because you're moving towards it. It's the water approaching you. In a few minutes, the pond area increases. Here, you're already in it. A small lake is formed, 60 feet deep, at the place where the piece of desert was. This real event happened in 2014 in the Tunisian desert. No one knows exactly on what day the lake appeared, since this part of the south of Tunisia is sparsely populated. At first, shepherds passing by saw the lake and didn't believe their eyes. In the next few hours, hundreds of locals came running to the place. They began to swim, jumping into the water from the surrounding rocks. But a few days later, something strange happened to the lake. In the beginning, it was a crystal clear turquoise blue color, but then it turned dark green. People didn't attach any importance to this and continued to swim. They shouldn't have done that. The scientists and geologists arrived and immediately announced that it wasn't safe to swim in the lake. Muddy green water means the lake is stagnating. It's not refreshed. It's not fed by underground springs. Now the lake is filled with algae and a lot of harmful bacteria that can cause serious diseases. They also found out that this region of Tunisia is filled with huge deposits of phosphate. This substance can disintegrate and leave radioactive traces. The lake can be carcinogenic, toxic, and hazardous for any living organism. But people didn't worry about this too much. They walk in the middle of the desert, while the sun heats the air to 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Most of them are unlikely to refuse to jump into cool water, despite the warnings of scientists. Until now, no one knows exactly the reason for the appearance of the lake. Some scientists believe the lake was formed because of heavy rains. The lake is surrounded by rocks and is located inside a canyon. The water could just accumulate after each storm. Some geologists think an earthquake was the cause of the lake. A small seismic activity provoked the rupture of the Earth's rock above the water table, and through this hole, all the water splashed out. And if this theory is correct, then the lake can be pulled back underground through cracks. This is the same as when you pull the plug out of a drain hole in a filled bathtub. Any small earthquake is like pulling the plug out. Therefore, if you find yourself in these places, don't swim in this radioactive lake. We're going to the Caribbean Islands region. Among the clear blue sea, you can find a unique lake. It's located on one of the Paradisical Islands. You may not even notice the lake right away. The entire territory may seem like a huge concrete platform, but the main thing is not to step on its surface. Pitch Lake is a lake filled not with water, but with liquid asphalt. This is the largest asphalt deposit in the world. Steam is coming from all over the lake as it's hot. The depth of this lake is 250 feet. An entire passenger Boeing could fit there in an upright position. The lake is not fully studied, but scientists believe there's a deep fault in the Earth's crust under it. A huge amount of oil seeps through it. It passes through various chemical compounds and turns it into the asphalt. According to rough estimates, there are about 10 million tons of hot material inside this place. Theoretically, no life can exist in such conditions, but scientists have discovered a colony of microbes. Somehow, these creatures have learned to survive here. This also suggests that life outside of our planet may exist. The largest moon of Saturn, Titan, has many hydrocarbon lakes on the surface. And if the simplest forms of life appeared among 1 million tons of molten asphalt here on Earth, then nothing prevents them from appearing on Titan. We're going to Indonesia, to the island of Java. You need to climb a large volcano to see the next phenomenon. The volcano is overgrown with grass and trees, but it doesn't seem to be sleeping. Smoke is pouring out of its mouth. You climb to the top and see a clear lake instead of boiling magma. The blue sky is reflected in its bright turquoise surface. But don't try to jump there. This lake is filled with acid. The magma inside volcanoes comes from the deep bowels of the Earth's crust. The incandescent liquid consists of many molten metals and chemical compounds, and the lake is filled with particles of these metals. In addition, the volcano emits sulfur dioxide gases. When they combine with metals, they form a beautiful turquoise color. You'd better come back here at night. In some places, a lot of sulfur is concentrated. These accumulations come out of the lake and come into contact with the air. When this happens, everything around bursts into bright blue flame. It's safe to observe this from the side, but don't get too close. Nearby, on this island, there's another acid lake. It also releases sulfurous gases into the air, which are easily ignited when in contact with oxygen. And when this happens, the gases burst into a bright blue electric flame. It's difficult to see the flames during the day. At night, you can see these flashes from afar. Our next location is Australia. You start the drone high above the forest area. Among the green, dense forests, you can see a bright pink spot. It's our lake. This time, the beautiful pink color may not stop you from swimming. You can relax here and take beautiful photos. The lake attracts thousands of tourists, but scientists have only recently been able to find out the reason for the unusual color. At the bottom of this salty lake in Melbourne, special algae grow and secrete a red pigment. In combination with sunlight, high temperatures, and a small amount of precipitation, it turns the lake pink. By the way, Australia is not the only place with such a phenomenon. There are lakes with a pink tinge of water all over the world. You can find them in Senegal, Bolivia, Kenya, and many other countries. The water of these places is also salty and contains the red pigment of unusual algae. We leave the hot beaches and fly to cold Canada. Here, we see a frozen Lake Abraham. We step on the ice and notice huge frozen bubbles inside. They resemble jellyfish, and there are thousands of them there. This is methane. It's a highly flammable substance. The grass, leaves, pieces of trees, and any organic substances that fall into the lake become food for a lot of bacteria that emit methane. Upon contact with frozen water, methane turns into tens of thousands of frozen balls. When the ice melts, the bubbles burst and sizzle. This phenomenon can also be observed on some shores of the Arctic Ocean. There, the size of the bubbles can reach several times more than balloons. It's a beautiful sight, but it's not safe, since methane ignites when it contacts with air. We're in the coldest place of our journey. It's Antarctica, near the driest desert on Earth. A dry place doesn't mean it has to be hot. It's an area with minimum precipitation. The desert isn't sand and cacti, but a place where almost no living life inhabits. Some areas of Antarctica meet these two criteria. However, in this icy desert, you can notice a tiny lake. Its depth is only a few inches. Technically, it's a pond, but the most amazing thing is that it stays in a liquid form. The temperature here drops to negative 58 degrees Fahrenheit. The pond should be frozen, but this doesn't happen. Don Juan Pond is one of the saltiest reservoirs on the planet. The amount of salt here doesn't allow the water to freeze. Scientists have been studying this lake for more than 60 years, but they still can't find out the exact reason for the appearance of water here.
There's a place on Earth so dangerous that even the most fearsome creatures of today wouldn't last a moment there. It used to exist in what we now call southeastern Morocco, the land called the Kem Beds. The story of this place stretches back to the Cretaceous period, about 100 million years ago. It might have looked like a beautiful place at first sight, a lush green forest, rivers glittering in the sun, until you meet some terrifying dinosaur. The lions or sharks of today are nothing compared to what the fossils show us. The Kem Beds were dominated by terrifying predators, and above them all, 3 of the largest predatory dinosaurs ever discovered. For example, Spinosaurus. This dinosaur was unlike anything you can imagine, a half reptile, half monster standing over 50 feet tall, bigger than a T-Rex. This hybrid with a crocodile-like snout and a sail on its back hunted the forests. But this dino could dive into the rivers, so not even waters were safe from it. It could catch huge fish, as if plucking them from the shallows. There was also Carcharodontosaurus, a carnivore with the name that literally means shark-toothed lizard. Its razor-sharp teeth could slice through flesh with terrifying ease. This monster stood almost as tall as a house and was faster, stronger, and more aggressive than nearly anything that had ever walked the earth. There was also Deltadromedas, a raptor-like dinosaur built for speed. It was a quick-moving ninja that stalked its prey with horrifying precision. Oh, and the skies were a fun place too, with all these pterosaur creatures flying around. These guys are often mistaken for flying dinosaurs, but they were actually a different kind, more like close cousins of dinosaurs. These majestic reptiles soared above the Kem Beds and had wingspans that could stretch up to 30 feet. The fingers were feathery, with a 4th finger kinda like bats. They could glide through the air so easily thanks to their super light skeleton. But it wasn't just the dinosaurs that made the Kem Beds so horrifying. The waters also hid their own dark secrets. They were home to giant, terrifying fish and crocodile-like creatures. Their jaws were strong enough to crush bone, and they were lurking beneath the surface, waiting for anything unlucky enough to stumble into their path. One of the river creatures was Sarcosuchus, also called the super croc. Being about 40 feet long, it could easily swallow an adult human. Or better yet, it could take on a full-grown dinosaur and win. Its jaws snapped with unimaginable force, and no creature, not even Spinosaurus, was safe from it. Coelacanths could also hang out in the rivers. It was a monstrous predator that could easily swallow a huge fish whole. They had these creepy, icky fins that moved in a way similar to how human arms and legs move. And they could also kind of raise their heads like humans because of a special joint in their skull. Ew. Fun fact, we thought these monsters had gone extinct 60 million years ago, together with dinosaurs. But recently, we rediscovered them living and thriving in the Indian Ocean. Turns out they were just hiding in the deep waters. They probably didn't even notice the dinosaur asteroid or humans at all. Yay? Don't worry, over millions of years, they became basically harmless. They got 4 to 5 times smaller, even though they still weigh about 200 pounds. Just imagine what they were like back in the day. Kem waters were also home to giant lungfish and other creepy aquatic creatures. So you couldn't even drink or take a swim safely without getting bitten by something. Whew, what a place. Even turtles there were the size of cars. Imagine trying to survive in a world where creatures like this are literally everywhere. And I mean everywhere. This place was unique not because huge beasts lived there, but because of the sheer number of predators. You might think, it shouldn't be that easy for all these predators to hang out in one place, right? And you're right. Seems like prey was scarce there. That's even more chilling. All the predators just wandered around, hunting whatever meager life remained. And if there's none, then fighting each other. For years, scientists have wondered why it was the case. Maybe that's just how life was back then. And all corners of Earth were crazy like that. Or is there something special about this place? Some even say that maybe it's just because we only found predators' fossils, while normal friendly animals have disappeared, and that the fossil record might be skewed. But who knows? And the environment itself was just as fascinating as the beasts who lived there, just a bit more friendly. It's hard to imagine, but back in the day, this desert was a green paradise, humid, and full of rivers. The heat of the sun scorched the land. The climate was hot, so hot that even the poles were warm. The weather there was extreme. Dry seasons followed by intense storms, which shaped the land and life. The giant rivers carved their way through this landscape. They stretched from the Sahara, emptying into the ancient Tethys Ocean to the north. If you were there, you'd see vast, interconnected basins, and beyond them, the central Atlantic Ocean. The floodplain stretched out beneath a sweltering sky. The rivers were just as wild as local animals, flowing lazily one day, but raging like furious beasts the next. At first, these rivers were powerful, carving deep channels through the land and creating wide sandbanks. But over time, they slowed down, and the landscape changed into shallow ponds and salt-covered flats. As water gradually faded away, it left behind a patchwork of wetlands and slow-moving waters. Right now, the Kem Beds is a vast, rugged desert where time has stood still for millions of years. If you visited it, you'd see a giant escarpment, its rocky face winding along the border of Morocco and Algeria, bathed in the sun's harsh light. Beneath your feet would lie layers of fossilized history. That's one of the reasons why scientists were long fascinated with this place. It must be one of the most comprehensive collections of fossils ever discovered in northern Africa. There are fossils from other parts of Africa, of course, like Egypt's Bahariya Formation. But they don't tell us much about life during this time, not like Kem. That's all because those rivers we mentioned in hotter and drier places, they've eroded or still remain buried under the sand. The first discoveries from Kem began in the late 1940s. A scientist named Schubert uncovered bony fish fossils among the escarpment near the Morocco-Algeria border. Just a few years later, a paleontologist, René Lavoca, took things to the next level. Traveling by camelback, he scoured the desert landscape and uncovered a real treasure trove of fossils. He found the partial skeleton of a massive herbivore dinosaur. Finally, at least one peaceful creature in the Kem beds. This long-necked giant roamed the ancient river valleys and ate leaves like a good boy. For the next several decades, scientists only did small-scale fossil hunting expeditions to this place. There were modest discoveries made here and there. Then, in the 1970s, German paleontologist Helmut Alberti led his team to the Kem beds, and that's when things took a wild turn. They uncovered fossils of prehistoric fish, crocodiles, dinosaurs, and pieces of the infamous Spinosaurus. Imagine being one of the scientists on that team. They were probably jumping from excitement. By the mid-1990s, the fossil game changed dramatically. Incredible new species were identified from the Kem beds. Over the years, the discovery pace has only accelerated. Paleontologists, armed with new tools and techniques, have uncovered more fossils than ever before, and there's only more to come.
Currently, there are approximately 20 billion animals inhabiting our world. If everything were ideal, we would have 5 billion more animals on Earth. But many species have gone extinct, and around 44,000 species are currently in danger. The largest, most recent mass extinction event in history occurred during the dinosaur era, leading to the eradication of 75% of species on Earth. The Tulachi wallaby is a long-lost relative of today's kangaroo, but they had a hidden superpower, night vision. That's why they were mostly active at night. They were 3 feet tall and fed on grass, fruit leaves, and other plants. Wallabies lived in grassy areas near swamps and other water bodies, but not for long. By the 19th century, their numbers had gone down, bringing them to the edge of extinction. Only 14 wallabies had been left in the wild by 1920. A rescue mission was launched. They tried to capture the last 14 animals to protect them. But the situation got out of control and 10 wallabies lost their lives. The 4 remaining ones were transferred to a special facility, and in 1935, the last animal passed away. Only one picture of the Tulachi wallaby is left now. There were reports of the animal's sightings after that, but no proof was shown, and the creature was officially declared extinct in the 70s. Short-faced bears were a unique species that lived in North America, particularly Alaska. It was a massive bear, weighing around 1,500 pounds. When standing on its hind legs, it was around 12 feet tall, a whole foot taller than today's biggest beast in this family, the polar bear. This animal was different from today's bears because almost all of them are omnivores, except for polar bears. But this monster was solely carnivorous, which was the reason for their extinction. During the end of the Ice Age, many herbivores were gone, and those bears did not have enough food to survive. They were the Usain Bolt of the bear world, the fastest Bruins to have ever lived, reaching a top speed of 40 miles per hour, which is 5 miles faster than grizzlies. There are around 400 million pigeons in the world now. Some time ago, in America, a species of birds called passenger pigeons were abundant throughout the country, especially in the eastern forests. There were more than 1 billion of them, but they went from 1 billion to 0 in a few years. They had small heads and necks, but long tails and wings and strong breast muscles that allowed them to fly super long distances. The last passenger pigeon passed away in captivity in 1914. It was named Martha. With that, the ecosystem in the U.S. has never seen this bird again. Now, elks are enormous animals, but they look tiny when you compare them to long-gone Irish elks. That elk was around 7 feet tall at the shoulder with a humongous antler of 12 feet. Today, elk are only 4.5 feet tall at the shoulder and have around 4-foot-long antlers. Despite its name, this elk was found all over the world, from Asia to Europe. It got its name because, in Ireland near Dublin, researchers found a perfectly preserved specimen. Since then, it's been called the Irish elk. The last one passed away in Ireland. The main reason for their disappearance was their inability to adapt to changes. When the Ice Age ended, the elk could not survive and became extinct. Now, somewhere deep in the forests of Costa Rica lives the interesting-looking golden toad. It was discovered in 1966 in one particular spot where all toads would gather to mate. In 1967, a large population of this golden nugget was noted in that same spot. But the following year, only 10 to 11 toads were seen, and the year after that, in 1968, only one lonely male toad showed up at the spot. For years, there were searches for golden toads. In 2004, the toads were officially declared extinct. Humans were not responsible this time. The drought in the area in the 80s had a significant impact on the toads. Still, the last straw was the arrival of a new fungal species that caused the animal's skin to thicken, eventually leading to the toad passing away. This chytrid fungus is responsible for the extinction of more than 90 frog and amphibian species, becoming one of the biggest threats to their lives. Now, Canada is a very cold country, no surprise there, and nobody would expect tropical birds like parrots to live there. However, there was a parrot species that lived in America and some parts of Canada. I'm talking about the Carolina parakeet. Those were truly beautiful birds with orange-yellowish heads and green bodies. Their favorite rest spots were big trees alongside rivers. This parrot's favorite food was cocklebur seeds, which are poisonous to us, but the bird had no problem eating them. Also, they used the dangerous cockleburs as a defense mechanism. After they ingested loads of them, their meat became poisonous, and predators do not enjoy eating toxic birds. Carolina parakeets were abundant, there were millions of them. But since the Ice Age, their numbers had been gradually going down because of natural reasons, mainly temperature. By 1935, no such parakeets were left in the wild. Today's African lion had a much more prominent and notorious cousin, the Barbary lion. Those cats were mentioned in many famous old books. They were described as mean, terrifying beasts. It's believed that they were the largest lion species ever. Those big cats weighed around 600 pounds and were 9 feet from the head to tail. Unfortunately, this lion was declared extinct in the 90s due to many factors. Today, we only have one photo of this animal taken from a plane. Paradise parrots were native to Australia. They were genuinely amazing birds with captivating colors. What was unique about them was their nesting habits. They only nested in termite mounds. This parrot was always on the edge of extinction, and the reason for that is still unknown. Mice, rats, and other animals also hunted them, and it added fuel to the fire. The last bird was spotted in the year 1972. Since then, paradise parrots have only been seen in museums. The Gulf of Mexico was once home to Caribbean monk seals. This species of seals enjoyed spending time in the warm subtropical climate of the Caribbean. Most of the time, they were found near reefs and islands, foraging for food. Like most of us, they also loved sandy beaches and were usually seen in groups of 100 seals, resting before the next adventure. In the year 1886, monk seals were declared extinct. You can still see this animal in 2 museums. Both are located in the UK. As we all know, zebras have black and white stripes. But once, a zebra species had only half the body covered with brown and white stripes. The rest was just brown, and the belly was white. It was called the quagga. They lived in the southern part of Africa in grass fields and wet pastures, like today's zebras, and ate grass and other plants. The last quagga perished in 1888, but not all hope is lost. Today, extensive research is being done to bring this animal back into the wild. Australia is home to many outlandish animals, but the craziest ones are probably gastric brooding frogs. This species is not like your ordinary frog that lays eggs. They hatch their young inside their stomach and give birth by vomiting around 25 fully formed young frogs. Sometimes their stomach becomes so bloated that they have to breathe through their skin. Two species of this frog were discovered in the northern and southern parts of Australia in the 1970s by Mike Taylor. A decade after their discovery, both species are gone. The main reason for their extinction is the chytrid fungus. Luckily for them, they're also part of a de-extinction program that's putting serious efforts into bringing them back into the wild.